Chapter 2187, I Don't Fight with Women, 1, 1 by 1. What did that mean? Upon hearing this, Uncle Lien, Dongfang Lin, and Dongfang Yu were all confused. However, they immediately understood what Leng Ruoxue meant. This was because they had seen one of the 6 Reverend God-level experts being kicked over by Tsang. This unfortunate Reverend God was none other than the Phoenix clan's old ancestor. After the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was kicked out of the barrier, he was like a wild horse that had been let loose. He was ready to attack Leng Ruoxue and the others. However, he soon realized that he was the only one who had come out of the barrier. His other 5 companions were still blocked by the barrier. As for his opponents, they were 1, 2. A total of 7 people and 1 white whale. At that moment, he, who had been in high spirits, broke out in cold sweat. Was this the rhythm of a group fight? They're such bullies. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan, who had been brimming with confidence, could no longer muster up any of his confidence when he saw that there were at least 6 Reverend God-level experts on the other side. He was cursing in his heart. This was too much of a bully. You can't bully a beast like this, okay? He wanted to roar at the sky, but the other 5 hierarch experts sent by the beast race were at a loss for words when they saw this scene through the enchantment. Never in their dreams did they expect that their departure would be so unfavorable. One had to know that before they came, they did not think that this operation would be so difficult. In truth, they couldn't be blamed for this. When they had requested for the beast race to send people over, Fog Ripple had been afraid that they would cower upon hearing Azure's name. Thus, she had not informed them of Azure's existence. Otherwise, they would definitely not have sent people over so easily. Now, even if they wanted to retreat, they had nowhere to go. Just that transparent barrier had blocked all of their escape routes. Now, they saw the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan become the first unlucky person to try the crab. This fact left them with mixed feelings because the unknown fate of the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan could very well be theirs as well. Unless the 6 of them could join forces, but it seemed that with this barrier and the unknown rabbit, this idea could only become a dream. At the thought of this, the other 5 people who were still in the barrier were completely depressed. After living for so long, this feeling was indeed new to them. But the ones who were even more surprised should be Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and Lien Zhe. When the 3 of them saw this scene, they were stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses. After they came back to their senses, the 3 of them still couldn't believe what they were seeing. What was going on? So this was what that girl meant when she said to do it 1 by 1. The 3 of them rubbed their eyes and felt that they were seeing things. However, they soon realized that the unlucky fellow was still there. Moreover, his face was dark and unsightly. Seeing this, the 3 of them sympathized with him. Thanks Dongfang Yu, in particular, was deeply worried. He felt that he had been struggling with his thoughts for so long and had even thought of self-destruction, but now it seemed that he had thought too much. Ai. Sighing lightly, Dongfang Yu sighed in his heart. As expected of the disciple chosen by the great master. This mental quality, this aura, this calm and composed appearance really made him feel ashamed. At the same time, he felt even more ashamed. Previously, why was he so bewitched that he agreed with some people's thoughts and felt that a little girl was really difficult to take on great responsibilities? Now, it seemed that he was judging people by their appearance. This girl might look like a woman on the outside, but the strength in her bones was something that many men could not compare to. Moreover, this girl had many seemingly mysterious and powerful people by her side. He had really misjudged her in the past. At this moment, he was both regretful and glad. He regretted that he had given up on Leng Ruoxue back then. He was also glad that their relationship with Leng Ruoxue had not reached an irredeemable stage. However, if they wanted to have a harmonious relationship with Leng Ruoxue, they would probably have to go through a lot of trouble. That girl was very vengeful. He did not know if she would forgive them for their rudeness. Dongfang Yu was not very confident about this. After all, he had made it clear many times that they had decided to be loyal to Leng Ruoxue. However, that girl kept playing Tai Chi with them, which made them feel very helpless. What are you guys doing? The Phoenix clan's ancestor's trembling voice sounded out of thin air, instantly rousing the conflicted Dongfang Yu. How could he be so muddled? There was a strong enemy in front of him. Was this the time to think about such things? Then, Dongfang Yu sneered at the ancestral master of the Phoenix clan and said, "What are we doing? We should be the ones asking this, right? What are you guys doing?" Although his voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old glacier, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was clearly thinking about how to fight the enemy and protect the lives of these little fellows, but now it seemed that he had been overthinking. The situation before them was quite advantageous to them. Now, the beasts who had come to help were the ones who were more pitiful. Glancing at the beasts whose mouths were half open, clearly in shock and disbelief, Dongfang Yu's sympathy for them deepened. As for himself, he felt more relaxed. After hearing Dongfang Yu's words, the ancestor of the Phoenix clan was speechless for a long time. They were supposed to do something, but the situation on both sides had been reversed, so he was a little speechless. Just like that, Leng Ruoxue and the others stared at the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. The feeling of being stared at by 6 reverent gods and 2 deity emperors was extremely unpleasant. The old Phoenix ancestor felt that his legs had gone soft. No matter how arrogant and confident he was in his own strength, he wasn't sure if he could take on 6 reverent god-level experts and 2 emperor god-level experts who were eyeing him like prey. His sixth sense even told him that the 2 emperor god-level experts were even more difficult to deal with than the 6 reverent god-level experts. That's right, there was also a rabbit with unknown strength. Thinking of that rabbit, the anger of the husband and ancestor of the Feng clan instantly surged. After all, it was all because of that damned rabbit that he ended up like this. He hated Sang to the core, but in the face of a situation where the enemy was stronger than him, he could only endure it. At that thought, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan calmed herself down and cleared her throat. You guys want to fight the few with numbers? That's not what a gentleman should do. What a joke. Have we ever said that we are gentlemen? Leng Ruoxue sneered. She then continued, "You're not gentlemen, and you want us to treat you like gentlemen? You're thinking too much." The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was at a loss for words, but he still insisted, "No matter what, you can't fight with numbers. That's too much of a bully. I'm sorry, but we didn't seem to be bullying people. Besides, I'm bullying you, so what?" At the same time, she wanted to show Dongfang Yu, Uncle Yan, and the others how she should treat her enemies. In case they didn't know how happy they were. Chapter 2188, I Don't Fight with Women, 2. Upon hearing this, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan nearly vomited blood in anger. Not to mention that he had never been treated like this in the Phoenix clan. Even in the human world, humans were quite respectful and polite when they saw him. But now, a little girl was actually bullying him so brazenly. Was the world about to change? Right, what was this girl's name again? The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan thought about it carefully and finally remembered that this little girl's name was Leng Ruoxue. However, he had been living in seclusion in the Phoenix clan. Hence, he had never heard of Leng Ruoxue's name. But after today, he would definitely never forget this name. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue had already angered the hot-tempered him to the point of death. Then, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan said, "Little girl, you've got guts. If you have the ability, fight me one-on-one, don't talk big. Do you dare? You want me to have a one-on-one fight with you?" When Leng Ruoxue heard the words of the old Phoenix, she blinked her clear and beautiful eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with disbelief, as if she was saying, "I didn't hear wrong, right? What, are you afraid? Ha ha ha. If you're really afraid, just call me good grandpa and spare me. I'll let you go." The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan laughed out loud. At this moment, he seemed to have forgotten about the situation before him, and was only focused on being smug. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue only sighed. Then, with a face full of sympathy, she said, I'm not afraid. I just think that you're a hierarch, and it's unfair for you to ask a puny divine emperor like me to fight you one-on-one. After all, I won't lose face if I lose to you. But if the one who loses is you, may I ask if you would still have the face to see others in the future? The moment Leng Ruoxue said this, Uncle Long and the others looked at the old phoenix with pity. When the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan heard this, he was enraged. In his anger, a blazing flame that was half the height of a person suddenly appeared behind him. Damn you, little girl. I'll let you know how powerful I am today. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was enraged. The consequences were severe. Following that, he pounced towards Leng Ruoxue. However, before he could even get close to her, he was blocked by a demonic-looking man. You? The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan squinted her fiery red phoenix eyes and looked at the devilish man in front of her. Was this guy here to court death? The demon who blocked his way smiled faintly and said, Little Firebird, if you want to fight my woman, you'll have to get past me first. Little Firebird? These 3 words made the old phoenix explode. Damn it! Who are you calling a little firebird? This lord is the great fire phoenix. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan roared out in a low voice. So what? In my eyes, you're just a little bird. The demon said disapprovingly. In his opinion, he was already giving this phoenix face by calling it little firebird. Otherwise, this phoenix would only be an ant in his eyes. Upon hearing the demon's words, Leng Ruoxue could not help but laugh before the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan could react. Ha ha ha. Xiao xiao niao, these 3 words were really well hidden. Wasn't a phoenix just a bird? If the other party didn't want to be a bird anymore, she believed that the demon would have a way. However, she was still a little dissatisfied that the demon had snatched her practice partner. Thanks, freak. He's mine. Leng Ruoxue pretended to grumble as she reminded him. However, she definitely didn't expect that the words he's mine would anger the demon. When the demon heard these words, his face turned black instantly. Then, he glared at Leng Ruoxue and roared with jealousy, He's not yours, I'm yours. Ugh! Leng Ruoxue was dumbfounded. What did she say? She didn't mean it that way. She only wanted to say that this bird was her opponent. That demon, was he thinking too much? Leng Ruoxue felt guilty for a moment. She really didn't mean to let the demon misunderstand her. Moreover, it was not just the evildoer who was misunderstood. When Song heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he ran to her side with tears in his eyes and buried his head into her embrace. He choked with sobs, Yes, he's not yours. I'm yours. What's so good about that bird? Its fur was hard and uncomfortable to the touch. Girl, you can't have him. Looking at the dark-faced evildoer and the complaining Azure, she heard the little white whale say, Schwa I'm much cuter than him. I can even act cute. Can you choose me? Don't want him. Ugh. Leng Ruoxue did not know what to do. The guys fighting for favor were so scary. She looked at Dongfang Lin helplessly, but Dongfang Lin only responded with a helpless expression. Then, Leng Ruoxue could only explain pitifully, You've misunderstood. What I wanted to say is that he is my opponent. After hearing her explanation, the evildoer was still very angry. Then, he gritted his teeth and said in a sinister voice, I'm confiscating this fellow. The moment Leng Ruoxue heard this, she felt extremely aggrieved. Then, she looked at the demon pitifully, hoping that he would be soft-hearted and not confiscate this bird. However, the demon was unmoved. The old phoenix, who did not know life from death, saw that these two people had decided where it belonged without asking for its opinion in front of it. It was immediately very unhappy. It was already very angry, and now it was even angrier. Then, everyone heard the old phoenix ancestor's domineering voice, I don't want to fight you. She's the opponent I've chosen. He was looking at the evildoer when he said this, but the person he was pointing at was Len Ruoxue. And these words also made the demon instantly show his violent side. Bang! 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 A few heavy punches landed on the face of the old phoenix ancestor. As the demon punched, he shouted fiercely, "I'll let you choose her. I'll let you choose her. Humph. She's my woman. Who would dare to fancy her? I want that person dead." After a few punches, an old phoenix who was in high spirits was hit so hard that he saw stars and his face was covered in bruises. The old phoenix, who was obviously beaten senseless, completely forgot to react and just stood there blankly, letting the demon do whatever he wanted. Seeing this ferocious scene, Uncle Lien, Dongfang Lin, Dongfang Yu, and Lien Zhou were all dumbfounded. Their mouths were all half open, and they were so shocked that they couldn't speak. After all, who wouldn't be frightened by the ferocity of a handsome man's attack? Especially in the immortal realm. Gods used godly skills in battle. A divine skill, do you have it? But what was this? Directly using his fist. They had never seen such a barbaric god before. This time, it was really an eye-opener for them. After a long time, they finally came back to their senses. The first thing they did after that was to cover their eyes. They didn't dare to look at the horrifying scene because the unlucky phoenix in front of them was too miserable. Chapter 2189, I Don't Fight with Women. 3. The Phoenix clan's old ancestor had been beaten up so badly that she had gained a lot of weight. Moreover, she had already fainted. Even so, the demon still felt that his hatred was not appeased. He raised his leg and stomped on the old phoenix's weakest spot. Everyone who saw this scene, whether it was Dongfang Lin and the others or the beasties, could not help but gasp. This was simply too cruel, wasn't it? Dongfang Lin and the others were filled with endless sympathy for the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. On the other hand, the beasts were filled with fear. Some of the more timid beasts had even begun to cry and beg for mercy. I want to play too. I want to play too. Suddenly, the white whale jumped up in excitement and shouted. What do you want to play? Dongfang Lin asked curiously. I want to play like him. It looks interesting. White whale pointed at the demon. Ah! Dongfang Lin broke out in a cold sweat. Although he really wanted to tell the white whale that the demonic man was not playing around, based on his understanding of the white whale, he was afraid that the white whale would not take it seriously. To put it bluntly, the beluga whale lived in its own world and was only interested in things that it was curious about. If you want to play, then go play. Azure replied. It had always taken good care of its little brothers and sisters. After saying that, it moved a rhinoceros out of the barrier. This rhinoceros was of the same race as the one stuck in the tree trunk. They seemed to be related, and the bird that stood out would always be punished. As a result, as a member of the same race, it also became the white whale's plaything. After the huge rhino rolled out of the barrier like a ball, it immediately fell to the ground in fear. The white whale in front of it was a powerful being who stood at the top of all the beasts, and it gave it a great deal of pressure. Just the sight of the phoenix ancestor's miserable state made its heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys shrink into a ball in fear. Seeing this, it could not even think of resisting. Then, it sprawled on the ground and begged for mercy. Woo! My lord! Please spare me. I have the elderly and the young to take care of. The whole family is counting on me to support them. Without me, they won't be able to live for long. As it spoke, it kept kowtowing to the white whale that was looking at it curiously. The white whale listened to the rhinoceros' words and showed a sympathetic expression. I didn't expect you to be so pitiful. Yup. That's right. I'm very pitiful. Old man, please let me go. I'm begging you. I'm willing to be your slave and serve you for the rest of my life, as long as you let me go. The rhinoceros sobbed. It was truly afraid. You're really willing to serve me for a lifetime? After listening to the rhinoceros' words, the white whale picked the key points that it was interested in. It's true. It was true. To be able to serve the Lord is the honor of our rhinoceros clan. The rhinoceros quickly expressed his position when he heard that there was a chance. But do you know how to swim? Can you go down to the deep sea? How long can you stay at the bottom of the ocean? The white whale asked very seriously, and its series of questions directly confused the rhinoceros. The rhinoceros kept blinking its big eyes, thinking about how to answer so that the white whale wouldn't go crazy. It didn't like water at all. It said that before because it was trying to get sympathy, but now that the white whale asked, it wasn't so sure. It was afraid that if it went back on its word, the white whale would throw it into the deep sea to feed the fish in a fit of anger. It seemed that there were many carnivorous fish in the depths of the sea. The thought of that possibility made its heart tremble even more. Seeing that it didn't give him a reply for a long time, the white whale was suddenly angry. Damn it! I knew you were just playing with me. Do you think I'm stupid? Damn it! I must let you know why flowers are so red. The white whale roared, and its long tail swept directly onto the rhinoceros' fat body and threw it into the air. Every time it fell, it would use its tail to throw it back up. This cycle repeated, and the rhinoceros was so scared that it cried. No, I didn't. I'm not playing with you. Woo, let me go. The rhinoceros begged for mercy in fear. Moreover, this feeling of up and down made it so nervous that its soul almost flew out of its body. Humph. You're just playing with me. Damn it. If I don't teach you a lesson, where will I put my face? Bai Jing said angrily. This time, after the rhinoceros fell from the sky, the white whale didn't throw it up. Instead, it used its tail to attack the rhinoceros' thick body. Pa. With a few hits, the rhinoceros' thick skin was torn open, and its painful wails spread out to a radius of at least 100 miles. Ai. It's a pity that it has such a strong hide. If it was preserved in good condition, it could be used to make a lot of equipment. Seeing this, Lin Ruoxue said with a face full of reluctance. Thanks. When Dongfang Lin and the others heard this, they mourned for the unlucky rhinoceros for 3 minutes. When the beasties heard Lin Ruoxue's words, they were all furious but did not dare to speak. As for the rhinoceros, it had already fainted from the pain. If it had been conscious, it would have fainted from anger. However, Bai Jing, who had also heard the same words, said to Lin Ruoxue nonchalantly, Shuai, don't be afraid. There are still quite a few rhinos here. It's enough for you. These words made all the rhinos present want to faint. That's true. Lin Ruoxue nodded. Seeing that Lin Ruoxue had agreed to his words, the white whale happily leaped into the air. As it descended, it landed directly on the unlucky rhinoceros. When Dongfang Lin and the others saw this terrifying scene, they covered their eyes once again. The people and beasts around Shuai were all so ferocious. This was the common thought of Dongfang Lin and the others. After torturing the unlucky rhinoceros until it was on the verge of death, the white whale was kind enough to spare its life. Then, it returned to its mimicry appearance and shyly returned to Lin Ruoxue's side. The petite and cute white whale was a sharp contrast to its previous ferocity. This made Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and Lien Zhe swear in their hearts that they would never judge a person or a beast by its appearance. At this moment, Lin Ruoxue looked at the unlucky old phoenix and rhinoceros. Then, she turned to Azure and said, Azure, put one down and come over. All right. I'm satisfied. After saying that, Azure's pitch-black eyes swept across the other 5 reverent gods. Who should be the next one? The hearts of the 5 reverent god-level cultivators skipped a beat when they saw its gaze land on them. It was obvious that none of them wanted to be chosen. However, this matter was obviously not up to them. The second reverent god chosen by Tsang was the one who had been called the dead cat by the ancestor of the Phoenix clan. The white-robed man was teleported out of the barrier. When he saw the 7 people and 1 beast in front of him, his scalp immediately went numb. How could he be so unlucky? How? How was he supposed to fight? He knew that he would have a high chance of winning if it was a one-on-one fight. After all, he thought that Dongfang Yu was the only one who could be his opponent. Of course, that monster had also joined in. However, he still couldn't figure out the monster's strength, let alone how a guy with the strength of a divine emperor could beat the hierarch so badly. It should be known that although he and the old phoenix were not on good terms, he was very clear about the old phoenix's strength. The two of them were almost equal in strength. When he thought of this, he glanced at the old phoenix, who was almost unrecognizable as a human. His heart trembled. He did not want to end up like this stupid bird. Therefore, he decided to stay away from the source of danger, which was that devilish man. In just a short moment, the white-robed man's mind had already turned 1,000 times. However, no matter how tangled, nervous, or even vigilant he was, he did not show it on his face. Furthermore, he did not dare to target Leng Ruoxue. After all, it was because the old phoenix had chosen Leng Ruoxue that he was tortured. As if she could read his mind, Leng Ruoxue smiled and said, "Your opponent is me. Don't worry, we won't gang up on you, because I want to use you as a practice." These words, no proud expert would be able to bear it. The white-robed man was no exception. He was also enraged for a moment, but he calmed down in the next second. He returned Leng Ruoxue's smile and said, "I don't fight with women. You don't have to treat me as a woman, I don't mind." Leng Ruoxue said disapprovingly. "Ah." When the white-robed man heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he was speechless for a moment. He thought to himself, this works too. But then he shook his head. "I won't lie to myself. You're clearly a woman. How can I not treat you like a woman? Do you want to fight me alone or with all of us? It's your choice." Leng Ruoxue didn't want to waste any more time and told the white-robed man to choose. When the white-robed man heard this, he was so angry that he almost fainted. Fuck. This was too much bullying. This wasn't a choice of two. This clearly left him with no choice. He knew very well that if he were to injure Leng Ruoxue in a fight, these people would definitely gang up on him. If he were to be beaten up by these people, he would be the unlucky one. In short, no matter what he chose, he would definitely not be the one taking advantage. This fact made him angry, but seeing how determined Leng Ruoxue was, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, "I'll fight you. Be good. That's the wisest choice, come." Leng Ruoxue hooked her finger at the man in white like a puppy. Then, she smiled. When the white-robed man saw this, he was momentarily dazed. His heart beat a few beats faster for no reason, and he couldn't help but feel disgusted. They were truly demonic. Why were this man and woman both so demonic? Chapter 2190, Change of Strategy. 1. The white-robed man looked at Leng Ruoxue and the evildoer, sighing in his heart. In reality, there were very few people in the divine realm who were particularly ugly, especially among the magical beasts. There were countless handsome men and beautiful women. However, the white-robed man could not deny that the number of handsome men and beautiful women he had seen, including himself, was less than 1/10 of these two men. Although these two people were only divine emperors, their auras could not be ignored. He did not even know when such monstrous figures had appeared in the divine realm. Compared to these two people, those White Tiger clan's geniuses seemed to be somewhat weak. Moreover, the current White Tiger clan was also very different from the White Tiger clan that had dominated the beast world hundreds of thousands of years ago. Simply put, the current magical beasts were going downhill, and the humans were not much stronger than the magical beasts. Although this could be due to the general direction of the divine realm, the magical beasts and humans had not been able to recover from the war hundreds of thousands of years ago. This was also a very important aspect. When he saw Leng Ruoxue and the demon, for some reason, the white-robed man was suddenly reminded of the past. Even though he was still very young at that time, he could still remember many things very clearly. At least, he could never forget what the White Tiger King had said back then, "You're digging your own grave." At that time, he was very young and did not quite understand the meaning of these words. However, after living for hundreds of thousands of years and becoming an ancestor of the White Tiger clan, he somewhat understood these words. He knew that the former White Tiger King was wise. The Great War back then had indeed caused the beast race to suffer heavy losses. Although the White Tiger race had a new king, this new king's appeal was clearly not enough. It took a long time for the new king to sit firmly on the throne. However, only he knew that the current White Tiger King did not live without fear for a single day. After all, the former White Tiger King was still alive. The man in white cleared his mind of the past and spoke to Leng Ruoxue in a gentlemanly manner. You make the first move. You look down on women. When she heard this, Leng Ruoxue narrowed her beautiful eyes, clearly a little displeased. She didn't know why, but she hated hearing this sentence the most. So, every time someone asked her to make the first move, she would feel very annoyed. No, I didn't. Ladies first. The white-robed man said with a faint smile. Priority, my ass. Don't you regret letting me make the first move? Leng Ruoxue huffed angrily. She secretly decided to leave a deep impression on this beastie. Yes. The man in white nodded helplessly. He didn't know why this little woman was angry. Shouldn't a gentleman take care of a woman? However, before he had the chance to figure it out, Leng Ruoxue had already unleashed a divine skill. The temperature in the air suddenly rose. Then, the shadows of two phoenixes appeared in the sky and slowly solidified. Then, two loud phoenix cries were heard. The fiery red phoenix with long tail feathers circled a few times in the air and swooped down towards the white-robed man. When the white-robed man saw this, he hurriedly set up a barrier for himself. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Damn it, he hated phoenixes the most. This little girl had actually used her divine power to condense phoenixes to fight with him. There were two of them at once. Wasn't she deliberately trying to anger him to death? He was a little angry, but he didn't show it on his face because he thought he had a good demeanor. However, the next second, he was dumbfounded. Because the two phoenixes had directly passed through the barrier and pounced towards him. Moreover, the two phoenixes seemed to be a little excited. He could even keenly feel that after the two phoenixes saw him, their eyes were shining as if they had seen a good prey. It was really strange. Although the white-robed man was bewildered, he did not dare to let his guard down. The temperature of the flames on the two phoenixes was obviously abnormal. The scorching temperature was directly at his face, causing the air around him to evaporate. Thanks as he was on guard, the white-robed man immediately transformed into his true form. Immediately, an incomparably beautiful white tiger floated in the air and began to circle around the two phoenixes. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue chuckled to herself. Then, she took out Feng Zhan and another old phoenix from her bracelet. The moment these two old phoenixes appeared, they mimicked the phoenix with divine power. At first, they were just illusions, but they slowly solidified. Those who didn't know would think that Leng Ruoxue had used her divine power to conjure two more phoenixes. Feng Zhan and the other phoenix also let out a long cry. Then, they joined with the other two divine phoenixes and surrounded the man in white who had transformed into his original form. When the white tiger saw this, it was instantly enraged. Fuck. Don't be like this. Wasn't this bullying? At this moment, it could deeply feel the depressed feelings of the unlucky old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. Although the two of them had received different treatment, the result was the same. It made him so angry. Didn't you say it was a one-on-one? What is this? The expression on the white tiger's face finally cracked. It could no longer maintain its elegant demeanor. Hearing the big white tiger's angry roar, Leng Ruoxue blinked her eyes innocently and said, "It's a one-on-one. They were all created by my divine power to play with you. Can't I do that?" Leng Ruoxue's words left the white tiger speechless. Furthermore, it was deeply suspicious. Were these four phoenixes really formed from divine power? Why did it look so real? Even those fiery red phoenix eyes were blinking innocently, as if he was the one who had bullied them. Fuck. This fact really gave it a headache. It was so angry that it wanted to curse. After living for so long, it thought that it was extremely smart, but now, it realized that it was a big fool. In front of this little girl, no matter whether it was in words or actions, it had never gained the slightest advantage. Now, it was surrounded by 4 phoenixes that were eyeing it covetously. Being roasted by their scorching temperature, it felt that its beautiful fur seemed to be a little burnt. Woo! It could already smell the burning smell. The white tiger really wanted to cry out loud. It should be known that any beastie that had beautiful fur would treasure their fur very much, and it was no exception. That fur was like another face for it. But now, it should be considered disfigured, right? The more it thought about it, the angrier it got. In a penny, in a pound, it charged at one of the phoenixes. The phoenix it had chosen was Fengzhan. Fengzhan was very excited to see it. How long had it not fought with the beastie of the White Tiger clan? He missed the days when his blood was boiling. With that in mind, Fengzhan stepped forward and confronted the beautiful white tiger. In an instant, the cry of the phoenix and the roar of the tiger resounded through the clouds at the same time. The phoenix and the tiger entangled together and fought. Chapter 2191, Change of Strategy. 2. The phoenix claw and the tiger's paw struck out one after another. Very quickly, Fengzhan's feathers were torn off by the white tiger's large paw, and the white tiger's fur was left with Fengzhan's claw marks. The 2 beasts were in an extremely sorry state. At this moment, the furious white tiger suddenly jumped out of the battle. Then, it glared at Leng Ruoxue and said with a face full of grief and indignation, "You lied to me. They aren't condensed from divine power at all." After fighting Fengzhan up close, it realized that this was a real phoenix, but it wasn't a member of the phoenix clan that it knew. It was worth thinking about the origin of this old phoenix. These 2 are indeed not, they are my contracted beastie. Seeing that she had been exposed, Leng Ruoxue generously admitted it. In any case, she didn't expect this tiger to be so stupid that it couldn't even tell. "Didn't you say you would fight me one-on-one?" The big white tiger was so angry that it was almost choking. It had lived for so long, but it had never seen such a detestable human. Was he bullying it for being stupid? It's a one-on-one. They didn't help, and my beastie is also a part of me, so they naturally don't count. Leng Ruoxue pointed at Uncle Long and the others. In fact, she didn't plan to let Fengzhan and the other 2 old phoenixes out, but Fengzhan's request was too strong. She felt that if she didn't let them out, it would be a huge waste of her time. So, she had to sacrifice her chance to practice and choose 2 phoenixes to play with the white tiger. It seemed that the phoenix tribe and the tiger tribe didn't get along very well. Fengzhan's excitement when he saw the tiger and the green light in his eyes made her. Ugh! How should he put it? It made her sympathize with this tiger. However, she was very clear about what was inside and what was outside. Hence, in order to satisfy the little request of an old phoenix, Leng Ruoxue could only let this unlucky white tiger down. When the white tiger heard Leng Ruoxue's sophistry, it was so angry that it wanted to cry. Its large blue eyes were already filled with tears, but it held back its tears. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue could not bear it anymore. Although this tiger was considered her enemy, she, who had always loved animals, saw a beautiful tiger looking at her with tears in its eyes and an extremely aggrieved expression. Her heart softened. After all, this tiger had never had the chance to do anything to her that would anger the heavens and cause resentment. Not only that, it seemed to be constantly being bullied. That. If you surrender, we won't fight this battle. How about it? Leng Ruoxue sighed and suggested. Little girl, I haven't had enough yet. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Fengzhan didn't give the white tiger a chance to speak and quickly said. Grandpa Zhan, I haven't learned it yet. However, look at how pitiful it is. It's already crying, can you still do it? I can't do it. Len Ruoxue said helplessly. Little girl, being soft-hearted to the enemy is being cruel to yourself. You must know that it is a member of Rime Ice, so it is our enemy. So, we can't let it go. Feng Zhan said with determination. Upon hearing this, the white tiger roared in anger. Who said him Fog Ice's people? Our white tiger clan won't easily recognize a master. Oh, if you're not that old woman's man, then why are you working for her? Feng Zhan couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Thanks, I'm here on the Tiger King's orders to help the God Lord's estate eliminate the rebels. The white tiger said in a soft voice. In fact, it was a little guilty. Although it was not a member of the Fog Phoenix, the current White Tiger clan had a close relationship with the Fog Phoenix. Therefore, it did not have the confidence to say these words. Moreover, as one of the witnesses of what happened back then, it had always been in a dilemma. However, the entire divine realm was now under the control of Fog Ice. Other than acknowledging its status, there was nothing they could do. Rebellious? Oh, right. We are traitors. Feng Zhan mumbled to himself, but the next second, he cursed angrily, motherfucker. You guys are the traitors. You have betrayed the beast race and the beast god, colluding with that woman, and now you are the ones who are trying to accuse her. Feng Zhan was furious. He pounced at the white tiger again, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. The two of them started fighting again. Seeing these two beastie, who didn't seem to be young, scratching and biting each other, attacking each other without any regard for their image, Len Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines. She thought to herself, it seems like the beastie that has been with me for a long time will be a little abnormal. This white tiger was probably the type that had been provoked. Just as Len Ruoxue was thinking of this, she saw from the corner of her eye that the other old phoenix was also rubbing its fists as if it was ready to attack. Before she could finish her thoughts, she saw another old phoenix shoot out like an arrow from a bow, rapidly pouncing towards the phoenix and tiger that were fighting. Although the two phoenixes that she had condensed with divine strength were also eager to try, they still obediently floated in the air. Upon seeing this, Len Ruoxue recalled them. From the looks of it, it would be difficult for her to master it today. Sob. Len Ruoxue felt a little aggrieved. Then, her beautiful eyes turned and swept across Uncle Lien and the others. She looked at them all and said, there are 4 more people, none of you are allowed to fight with me. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Len Ruoxue's threat made Uncle Lien and the others shiver. Then, they nodded their heads in unison and promised, don't worry, they're all yours. As soon as he said this, everyone immediately felt 2 cold daggers shooting at them. Instantly, they shivered and broke out in a cold sweat. Woo! It seemed like they had said the wrong thing. Then, Uncle Lien and the others showed a flattering smile to the evildoer. Then, they quietly moved to a place that they thought was safe, in order to lower their presence. Who would have thought that the evildoer would only scoff coldly and ignore them? He pulled Len Ruoxue into his arms and said, Shuer, these people are too weak. They're not worthy of your practice. Upon hearing this, Uncle Lien and the others couldn't help but secretly sigh. Wasn't this a blatant lie? Reverend God level was low. Could it be that he still wanted to practice on the mist ripple? Oh! What a crazy idea. The Reverend God level cultivators who heard that they were being despised were already furious. 2 of them had even secretly decided that if they were released by the rabbit, they would find this evildoer and fight him. At the same time, they would verify if this evildoer was really that strong. Because they still remembered how he had knocked Feng Yuan unconscious. Then who do you want me to practice with? Unlike the other humans or beasts, Len Ruoxue asked the demon in a serious tone. Me. The demon pointed at himself and said. You can't. You can't bear to be so cruel to me. Len Ruoxue shook her head, denying the demon's words. Right. Girl, if you want to practice, you have to find me, I can be ruthless. At this moment, Tsang interrupted with a smile. After he finished speaking, he even looked at the evildoer provocatively. The evildoer was so angry that he glared back at him and said to Len Ruoxue, "Shuar, I've changed my mind. You can use the remaining ones for practice. Although their strength is a little low, they're still barely enough for you to practice on." Chapter 2192, Change of Strategy, 3n. Len Ruoxue loved to hear these words, so she nodded her head happily and flashed a sweet smile at the demon. The moment the demon saw this, he immediately turned soft and wanted nothing more than to give everything he had just to get Len Ruoxue to smile. Just like that, the remaining Reverent God level cultivators were all reserved by Len Ruoxue. However, no one knew how many Reverent God level cultivators she could get her hands on. Then, she turned her beautiful eyes back to the battle between the two phoenixes and the tiger. At this time, the battle between the two old phoenixes and the white tiger was coming to an end. This was because the white tiger that was being attacked by the two phoenixes at the same time was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could not hold on for much longer. Feng Zhan was also injured, and even the old phoenix, who had joined the battle later, was injured. It was clear how intense the battle between the three beasts was. After a while, the pitiful white tiger, which was fighting 1 against 2, finally fainted. When the two phoenixes saw this, they immediately let out a long cry towards the sky. Then, they started dancing happily in the air as if they had just done something great. Len Ruoxue was speechless when she saw this. She thought to herself, 2 against 1, is there a need to be so excited? In reality, when the other old phoenix joined the battle, it instead stimulated the white tiger's full potential. Thus, in the end, although the white tiger was covered in injuries and was unconscious, the two old phoenixes, who were in a good mood, clearly didn't gain much of an advantage. However, when they were so happy, Len Ruoxue naturally wouldn't pour cold water on them. Next, Len Ruoxue said directly to Azure. "They're here." Sung replied. Then, another reverent god was released. As soon as the hierarch regained his freedom, he was determined to die. He looked at the demon and said, "I want to fight you. 1-on-1. Me?" The demon raised his brows when he heard this. He then looked at Len Ruoxue and was about to reject her when the hierarch spoke again, "You're not allowed to give me to her. I only want to fight you. You can go." When Len Ruoxue heard this, she said dejectedly, "Wu, I'm being despised. So sad. I'll be off then. Give me 2 minutes." Seeing this, the demon could only agree. When the reverent god heard the monster's words, he immediately released his pressure and provoked, "Well, 2 minutes is enough for me to defeat you. I'm looking forward to it." The demon laughed, and his laugh was so carefree. Then, the demon teleported in front of the reverent god and attacked him before he could even stand still. In an instant, the reverent god who had been floating in the air immediately fell limply from the air and fell to the ground, unconscious. Seeing this, the demon clapped his hands lightly and moved back to Len Ruoxue's side. In reality, he was giving that reverent god face when he asked Len Ruoxue to wait for 2 minutes. He did not intend to let him lose too badly. However, that fellow did not know his place and insisted on provoking him. Hence, he had no choice but to hit him with 1 strike. Now, even if that poor fellow did not die, he was probably only left with half a life. This move of his had not only intimidated his opponents, but also Uncle Lien and the others. If the way he dealt with the Phoenix clan's old ancestor previously reminded people of his violent nature, then this was absolutely terrifying. Reverent God level. He was a reverent god. In an instant. In just a moment, he had knocked down a reverent god who couldn't even fight back. How terrifying was his strength. Instantly, the image of the evildoer in their hearts rose again. This time, it became a terrifying one. Uncle Long expressed his sympathy to the people and beasts on both sides when he saw them looking at the evildoer in horror. In fact, he was also a little shocked by the evildoer today. However, he knew the identity of the evildoer, so he was much calmer than the other people and beasts. Although this monster only looked like a divine emperor on the surface, he was the master of the dark world. He was born with a high starting point. In addition to the pressure that he exuded, it was as easy as stepping on ants for him to take care of these people. Thanks this time, some people's minds should be completely honest, right? Uncle Long wanted to see someone beat their chest and stamp their feet in regret. He deserved it. It made them short-sighted. Uncle Long was very satisfied. His eyes kept on flitting across Uncle Lien, Dongfang Yu, Dongfang Lin, and Lien Zhe, causing the four of them to have goosebumps. As for Uncle Lien, he lowered his head in shame, not daring to look at Uncle Long's mocking eyes. Then, another reverent god was teleported out. Leng Ruoxue did not wait for the hierarch to speak. She pointed at the demon and said, "Are you looking for him to fight too?" The reverent god broke out in a cold sweat. The hierarch shook his head like a rattle drum after seeing the miserable state of the three men lying on the ground. Leng Ruoxue's mood brightened as she said, "Seeing that you're so tactful, I've decided to treat you better. I'll deal with you personally." The reverent god was speechless. This was called treating him better. Why did he feel that he was so unlucky? However, he was also very clear that he had no right to choose his opponent, because he was now a piece of meat on the other party's vulture, and could only be slaughtered. After hesitating for a while, the reverent god decided to go all out and said, Can I surrender?" Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue's eyes widened in disbelief. She asked in disbelief, "Don't you find it embarrassing? You are a reverent god. How can we surrender so easily?" "I just don't want to surrender after being beaten up by you," the reverent god answered honestly. He had already resigned himself to his fate and knew that the mission had failed completely. Besides surrendering and being at their mercy, he had no other choice. Of course, if it wasn't for the other party's despicable use of a barrier to trap them and then taking care of them one by one, they wouldn't have lost so badly. But this was the truth. There weren't that many ifs in the world. Although he was very unwilling to lose, he knew very well that there was no turning back for them in this battle. Do you feel that you've been wronged by your surrender? Do you think that if you weren't trapped in the barrier, you wouldn't have lost so badly? Leng Ruoxue asked with a faint smile as she saw through the reverent god's thoughts. How did you know? The reverent god asked in surprise. It's all written on your face. If I told you that even if all of you attacked together, your fate wouldn't change, you wouldn't believe me, right? Leng Ruoxue said. If you hadn't taken us down one by one, we would have definitely not lost. The reverent god said confidently. What if I'm willing to give you a second chance? Leng Ruoxue suddenly asked. What's the meaning of this? The reverent god thought he had heard wrong. Give them another chance? It couldn't be what he was thinking, right? Was that even possible? He didn't believe that this human woman would be so stupid as to give up the victory in her hands and start all over again. In reality, Leng Ruoxue's sudden change of strategy wasn't without reason. She had asked Sang to trap the reinforcements of the men in black mainly to deal with the men in black. Then, she had asked Sang to release them one by one so that she could practice her skills. However, her goal of practicing hadn't been achieved and these people had their own opinions on this matter. They felt that she had lost unjustly. Hence, she wanted to give them another chance. After all, he wanted to capture them alive, and they had their uses. Therefore, she must make these beastie convinced from the bottom of their hearts. Otherwise, if they kept feeling that they had lost unjustly, even if they were subdued by her, they would still feel uncomfortable in their hearts. What I mean is, I'm giving you a chance to start over. This time, let's fight as a group. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Are you sure? The reverent god still had a look of disbelief on his face. He felt that this was too unbelievable. Could this be true? She wasn't lying to him, right? Yes, I'm sure. Well, fight as a group. Since you think that the 6 of you can definitely defeat us together, then I'll let you all join forces. The beasts behind you can also attack together. How is it? Leng Ruoxue said calmly. When Uncle Lien, who was standing behind her, heard this, he instantly became anxious. However, Dong Fangyu held back Uncle Lien, who was about to speak, and gestured for him to calm down. Dong Fangyu believed that Leng Ruoxue would not do something that she was not confident in. Since she dared to say that, she must have a plan in mind. This time, Leng Ruoxue's words were very clear. After the reverend god confirmed it, he lowered his head and looked at his 3 unconscious companions. Then, he rejected, 3 of our companions have already been injured by you. They can't fight at all, so I can't agree to your proposal. He wasn't stupid. If the 6 of them were still intact, they would definitely fight with the other party. But now, there were only 3 of them left, while the other side had 6 reverent god-level cultivators and 2 divine emperors with unpredictable strength. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that his side had suffered a great loss. Take it and give it to the 3 of them. They'll immediately be alive and kicking. After hearing the hierarch's words, Leng Ruoxue threw a jade bottle over. It contained healing pills. The reverend god took the jade bottle and opened it to smell it. After confirming that it was a healing pill, he looked at Leng Ruoxue with a complicated expression. He could not understand what this human woman was up to. Why did he have to overturn this good situation and start over? This shouldn't be something a normal person would do, right? Chapter 2193, Beastie also joins the battle. 1. The reverend god was filled with suspicion. As he was thinking about this, he fed the 3 unconscious reverend god pills to them and they quickly woke up. After the 3 of them woke up, they were in a daze for a moment. When they were slightly more awake, they looked down at their injuries and were surprised to find that they had all recovered. They looked at each other in disbelief. Then, they all turned to look at the reverend god who had fed them the pill. The hierarch did not expect Leng Ruoxue's elixir to be so effective. Based on their injuries, they should have recuperated properly even after taking the elixir. However, by the looks of it, their injuries had completely healed. Long Chen, you saved us. Where's that damned girl? And where's the guy who injured me? Don't tell me you let them escape. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan looked at the reverend god and roared. He had just regained consciousness and only saw his own people. Therefore, he naturally ignored Leng Ruoxue and the others. Moreover, he did not turn around. When he saw Long Ju's calm face, he thought that the matter had been settled. When Long Ju heard what the old Phoenix ancestor said, he quickly gave him a look. However, the old Phoenix with a bad temper didn't seem to notice it. He even asked with a concerned look, Long Ju, what's wrong with your eyes? Are you cramping up? Long Ju really wanted to kick him when he heard this. Fuck. How blind was this person? He couldn't even tell when she gave him a look. Cramps? He wasn't having a cramp. He wanted to beat up this old Phoenix who had no eyes. Seeing that Long Ju was so angry that he did not want to bother with the unlucky old Phoenix, Leng Ruoxue could only reply on his behalf kindly, I'm the one who saved you. We didn't run, we were just waiting for you. Upon hearing this, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan quickly turned his head and saw Leng Ruoxue smiling at him. Then, he saw the demon from the corner of his eyes. Instantly, his fiery red phoenix eyes were filled with hatred. In the next second, he charged towards Leng Ruoxue and the demon without even thinking. Seeing this, the demon directly kicked him back the moment he got close. Bang! With a loud sound, the tall and strong human-shaped old phoenix just happened to hit the transparent barrier. Then, it slid down the barrier and fell to the ground, fainting again. Long Ju could not help but cover his face when he saw this. AI. Wasn't this self-inflicted? After living for so many years, why was this old phoenix still so impulsive? Long Han secretly sighed to himself, feeling extremely sympathetic towards this old phoenix. All of a sudden, he wasn't sure if he should agree to Leng Ruoxue's new suggestion. Glancing at the situation and strength on his side, he felt that the confidence of winning on his side did not seem to be so great. Thanks however, even though he didn't explicitly agree to Leng Ruoxue's suggestion, he had already given the pills to these 3 fellas. If he were to go back on his word now, he would probably end up in a bad state, right? Thinking of the evil man's brutal means, he couldn't help but shiver. Then, he made up his mind and thought, forget it. Now that things had come to this, it was already too late for them to stop. Previously, they had blamed the other party for their despicable means and wanted to break them one by one. Now that the other party had given them a new opportunity, if they refused, wouldn't they be too ungrateful? Therefore, they could only brace themselves and accept the battle. As he thought of this, he turned to Leng Ruoxue and said, "We agree to your suggestion, but our companion has been knocked unconscious by the person beside you." In other words, he still needed a healing pill because there were only 3 pills in the jade bottle that Leng Ruoxue had given him. Take it. Without another word, Leng Ruoxue threw a healing pill to Long Ju. Then, she said to the demon in a coquettish manner, "Evildoer, you've caused me to lose an additional healing pill. It doesn't matter. We can put the bill on them and ask their king for it." The demon laughed. That's a good idea. Leng Ruoxue nodded her head in agreement. However, when Long Ju heard this, he was shocked. The pill in his hand felt like a hot potato. He was at a loss. What do you mean? After a long while, Long Ju finally reacted and asked carefully. What I mean is that they need to pay for the pills they eat. And I will put this debt on your king's head. When the time comes, I will find him to settle the bill. Leng Ruoxue explained with a smile. Ah. Looking at the tiny pill in his hand that was emitting an alluring fragrance, Long Ju really felt that it was a hot potato this time. However, he couldn't just reject it. After all, they didn't have such effective healing pills. Forget it. Anyway, the money wasn't going to be on his head, so why was he thinking so much? With that thought in mind, he fed the pill to the old ancestor without any burden. This time, he stared unblinkingly at the old phoenix. As soon as the old phoenix woke up, he immediately held it down. Then, he whispered to the old phoenix, "Calm down, or else, if you faint again, I'm afraid you'll have to sell yourself to pay off your debts." What do you mean? The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was shocked. What did this have to do with him fainting? That's right, it was Long Chen who had saved him. You fainted twice, and your injuries were not light. I also gave you 2 healing pills, and those pills were provided by Miss Leng, so you have to pay. So, you must not faint again. Long Ju cautiously reminded. Old dragon. Tell me clearly, what is going on? The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was a little confused when he heard Long Chen's words. He couldn't understand. He was going to faint. Why did he need that little brat to provide him with the pills? Furthermore, it was a pill that required payment. Could it be that this old dragon had sold him out when he was unconscious? Yup. What's going on? The white-robed man and the other reverent god were also confused. When Long Ju saw the situation, he could only tell them the cause and effect of the matter. However, the 3 people's reactions were completely different. The white-robed man had a complicated expression on his face while the hierarch who had been killed by the monster was terrified. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was furious and asked hurriedly, "Did you agree to their request?" Long Han nodded and thought, "Otherwise, how could you have woken up? How could you agree to their request? You're clearly taking advantage of the beast's perilous state." The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan roared. "How are we taking advantage of the beast?" Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxue didn't give Long Ju a chance to reply and asked curiously. You, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan stammered as she looked at Leng Ruoxue, who was smiling at her. Chapter 2194, Shou also joins the battle, too. In reality, he had no idea how the other party had taken advantage of the beast's perilous state. However, when he heard Long Ju say that he had agreed to start over, he felt extremely uneasy. Thus, he had blurted out those words without even thinking. Now that he heard Leng Ruoxue's question, he felt even more certain that his 6th sense was right. This cunning human definitely didn't have good intentions. Don't be nervous. As long as you don't lose your temper, we won't do anything. Come, let's talk slowly. Do you want to drink some water first? Len Ruoxue consoled this obviously nervous old phoenix. Her attitude was so good that this old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was not used to it. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan blinked her fiery red eyes and was stunned for a moment before she said, "You shouldn't have taken the opportunity to sell us pills." "Humph. We don't have any intention of buying it. So you're saying you want to renege on your debt?" When Len Ruoxue heard this, she blinked her beautiful eyes and asked indifferently. "I'm not going back on my word, I just didn't want to buy it," the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan emphasized. "What's the difference? You've already eaten the pill, and now you're telling me that you don't want to buy it? Then, how about we restore the three of you to your original state?" Len Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept across the reverent god who had eaten her elixir as she asked calmly. "Ugh." These words made Long Ju break out in cold sweat. Heavens, it couldn't be what he was thinking, right? As for the man in white and the reverent god who had been killed in an instant, they trembled in unison when they heard Len Ruoxue's words. Their faces slowly turned pale. Only the energetic old phoenix asked in a silly manner, "Return to its original state. How much have you recovered?" Pfft. Uncle Long couldn't help but burst into laughter at his words. He didn't expect this old phoenix to be so out of line. However, he was so silly that he was quite cute. "What are you laughing at?" Hearing the laughter, the old ancestor of the Phoenix tribe was enraged again. "It's nothing. It's nothing." Uncle Long waved his hand. He didn't want to become the old phoenix's target. In fact, he hated fire. Seeing that Uncle Long was showing signs of giving in, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan turned her gaze back to Len Ruoxue and waited for her reply. When Len Ruoxue saw this, she smiled faintly and said, "It'll restore the three of you to the appearance you were before you ate the pill." How about it? Didn't that mean that he would have to beat them up again? This time, the old phoenix finally understood what Len Ruoxue meant. However, even though he understood, the anger in his heart rose to the height of half a person. Just as his anger was about to reach the sky, he saw the demon and immediately quieted down. Woo, that perverted man. One kick sent him flying. How was he going to face others in the future? He didn't know that the man in white and the reverent god who was killed by the monster didn't end up much better than him. Therefore, he started to blame himself. As the other two parties involved, Len Ruoxue's suggestion made their hearts tremble. In order to express their attitude, the two of them immediately said in unison, "We agree to start over." In fact, they had no choice but to agree. However, if the six of them joined forces, they still had a chance of winning. At the very least, they were much stronger than them in individual combat. In a one-on-one battle, they really had no chance of winning. The other two thought to themselves. Thanks as a result, the opinion of the Phoenix clan's ancestor was ignored, and the poor old Phoenix was immersed in its own thoughts. Before the battle started, Len Ruoxue carefully explained the details of the battle. "The six of you and the beasts behind you can all take action. As for us, we won't be the only ones who will take action. You don't have any objections, right?" Len Ruoxue asked indifferently. "No objections. But I want to know, who else will be joining the battle?" Long Han asked with a serious expression, but his eyes couldn't help but turn to azure. This rabbit's strength was unfathomable. If it also joined the battle, it would be very disadvantageous to them. Although Long Ju did not say it out loud, his thoughts could not be hidden from Len Ruoxue. Len Ruoxue smiled and said, "Other than the few of us, my beastie will also participate in the battle. Of course, this rabbit is not included. It's not participating." Hearing this, Long Ju heaved a sigh of relief. As for Len Ruoxue's beasties, he did not care much about them. This was because he was not sure how many beasties Len Ruoxue had. When Uncle Long heard Len Ruoxue's words, he was already laughing in his heart. These guys would regret it later. Shuai's beasts might not be as many as the beasts in front of them, but their combat power was not bad. It was not something that this motley crew could compare to. Because Uncle Long knew how many beastie Leng Ruoxue had, he was not worried and was even prepared to watch a good show. However, Uncle Lien and Lien Zhe were not sure. The moment the two of them heard that other than the few of them, only Leng Ruoxue's beastie would be participating in the battle, they became anxious again. The difference in numbers between the two sides was a little too big, right? They would be exhausted to death if they were to fight in turns. Moreover, the other party had 6 extremely powerful Reverent God-level experts. In this case, wasn't the situation very disadvantageous to them? Although the two of them were a little anxious, they didn't dare to say anything when they saw that Dongfang Yu didn't have any reaction. They didn't want to offend the little girl. If that happened, they would be the unlucky ones. So, they could only endure it. However, this feeling of not being able to say anything was really uncomfortable. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Uncle Lien and Lien Zhe from the corner of her eyes and laughed to herself. Then, she said to Long Ju with a calm expression, "We can start the war." As she spoke, Azure also withdrew his barrier. However, a new barrier immediately enveloped everyone, including Leng Ruoxue and the others. In Azure's words, he was afraid that the other party would run away. When the other party saw that Leng Ruoxue and the rest were in the same boundary as them, even if they were unhappy with Tsang, they could not voice it out. After all, they were just. The beasts who had regained their freedom were like ferocious tigers that had been released from their cages. Each of them strode forward valiantly and with high spirits, they stood in front of Leng Ruoxue and the others. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue's mind shifted, and she moved her spirit beasts out of her bangle. The moment the spirit beasts appeared, they all fought to be the first to burrow into Leng Ruoxue's embrace. Those who could not get a good position would try to rub against Leng Ruoxue's calf to show their closeness. Whether it was Uncle Lien and the others, or Long Han and the other opponents, they were all dumbfounded and speechless for a long time when they suddenly saw so many beasts in front of them. After a long while. Only then did Long Han return to his senses and stammered, They are all your beastie. Oh my God. Wasn't this number a little too much? Moreover, there were dragons, phoenixes, and even a white tiger among these beasts. How was this possible? Chapter 2195 ORCC also joins the battle. 3. Previously, when Leng Ruoxue had summoned the 2 phoenixes, they had yet to figure out their origins. Seeing so many at once, their hearts couldn't take it. Yup. They are all. Leng Ruoxue replied calmly, not feeling that this was something to be surprised about. It's just a few more beastie contracts. This is impossible. It was impossible for a human to contract so many beasties. And these phoenixes, where did they come from? When the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan heard Leng Ruoxue's words, she roared in disbelief. She had seen the 2 phoenixes earlier, but she had not had the time to ask who they were. Is it impossible, or are you just too ignorant? As for where they came from, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and laughed evilly. In reality, this was not all of her beastie. Some of the beasts stayed in the land of evil demons, and some were in seclusion. However, those who had nothing to do had basically all come out. And the phoenixes came out in a complete group. She knew that the other party had been frightened. But could she be blamed for this? There was no way Leng Ruoxue would take the blame for causing them to be frightened. Furthermore, releasing the beasts from the bangle was not just to intimidate the other party. At the same time, it was also for Uncle Lien and the others to see. Who asked them to have no confidence in themselves. As it turned out, Uncle Lien and the others were indeed frightened. And he was quite frightened. This was because Leng Ruoxue had too many beastie by her side. It was so many that they could not imagine it. The Phoenix matriarch was once again rendered speechless by Leng Ruoxue's words. At this moment, the only man in black among the 6 of them said calmly, It's indeed impossible. Humans don't have such strong spiritual power, so the number of beasts that humans can contract is limited. So, I really want to know how you did it. I don't know. I only know that I can contract them. It can't be considered that I've contracted them, it should be them who have contracted me. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. Most of her beasts came to her on their own accord. To put it bluntly, she was the one who was being relied on. When the man in black heard this, he only glanced at Leng Ruoxue indifferently. He did not continue to question her about the origins of those beasts. Instead, he said, "Let's start." "All right." Leng Ruoxue nodded. The group battle began. Many beastie beasts had already secretly found their own opponents, and were only waiting for the battle to officially begin. No one knew who started it first, but soon, both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. The 6 Reverent God level experts from the other side had their eyes on Uncle Long and the rest. As for Leng Ruoxue and the demon, they were both ignored by the beasts. In fact, during the battle, the other party's beasts would intentionally distance themselves from Leng Ruoxue and the demon's territory. As a result, in the vast battle arena, the two of them were the only ones with the most space around them. They were the most idle. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue was depressed. What was the meaning of this? Discrimination? Why didn't anyone look for them to fight? The person she was looking for had immediately found an opponent for herself after realizing her intentions. This fact made Leng Ruoxue feel extremely aggrieved. Evildoer, we're being despised. Leng Ruoxue said listlessly as she leaned into the evildoer's arms. She had really suffered a blow. It doesn't matter, well, spurn them too. The demon hugged Leng Ruoxue gently and comforted her. That's right, Nyo. We also despise them. Azure also came over to console him. But I want to fight. Leng Ruoxue's hands were itching for a good fight. She had thought that she could have a good fight, but who knew that these beasts would actually avoid harm? Was she really that scary? Leng Ruoxue carefully recalled. She didn't seem to have done anything shocking today, right? Although Head dealt with 3 reverent gods before, 2 of them had been done by the demon, and the other one had been done by Feng Zhan and the others. He hadn't even had the chance to show off. Thinking of this, Leng Ruoxue became even more depressed. In reality, Leng Ruoxue didn't have any outstanding achievements today. However, she had a demon by her side. Who would be so blind as to find trouble with her? Wasn't that just seeking death? The terrifying image of a demonic woman had already been deeply engraved in the other party's heart. Hence, they did not dare to lay their hands on the demonic woman, Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, if they accidentally hurt Leng Ruoxue, that terrifying man would definitely not let them off. It was because of this that they instinctively avoided Leng Ruoxue. As for that evildoer, he should be the one to avoid him. In contrast to Leng Ruoxue's low spirits, Baby and the other beasts were having a great time. With their intelligence and tacit cooperation, the beasts that they thought were stupid were not their opponents at all. Therefore, it did not take long for many of the other side's beasts to be injured and withdraw from the battle. Thanks, and Baby and the other beasts continued to work hard, joining forces to attack and dealing with the unlucky beasts they encountered one by one. One of the beasties saw that the situation was not good and simply lay on the ground and pretended to be dead. When Treasure and the other beasts saw this, they didn't expose them. Instead, they continued to attack other targets. After a long time, the other beasts on the battlefield were basically wiped out. Of course, those beasts were only seriously injured and not dead. This could also be considered as them showing mercy to their treasures. In an instant, the originally lively battle arena was left with only the 6 Reverent God level experts from both sides. Feng Zhan and the other beastie all found their own seats and became spectators. The 12 hierarch from both sides each took a corner and fought in pairs. Among the 6 people on Leng Ruoxue's side, Uncle Long and Dong Fangyu were in the best situation. The 2 of them had the easiest time. As for Uncle Lian, Lian Zhe, Dong Fang Lin, and Bai Jing, they were having a harder time. especially the white whale, whose opponent was the Phoenix clan's ancestor. As a beast of the sea, the white whale itself hated beasts of the fire attribute. In addition, its strength on land was not as strong as it was in the water. Therefore, against the old phoenix, it seemed to be a little bit of a force to follow. However, it naturally wouldn't give up so easily. It belonged to the type of person who would become more courageous as the battle progressed. Therefore, it was greatly provoked and went against the Phoenix clan's ancestor. There was even a sign that they wouldn't rest until one of them died. Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but worry about the white whale. That was because the white whale's originally smooth body had been burned by the old phoenix's natal flames until it was a little cracked. The most severely burned area was already oozing with red blood. This made Leng Ruoxue's heart ache. Following that, Leng Ruoxue leaped to the white whale's side and blocked an attack from the Phoenix clan's ancestor for it. She then stuffed another pill into the white whale's mouth. When the Phoenix clan's ancestor saw this, she immediately glared at it and said in a loud voice, "What are you doing? Do you want to fight the few with numbers? Even if I lose, I won't accept it. Not convinced? Do you think that you can be proud of winning in this situation? If you have the ability, you can go to the deep sea and fight it." Leng Ruoxue said with a look of disdain. The beasts in the sea did not have an advantage on land, not to mention that one of them had the water attribute and the other had the fire attribute. No matter how he looked at it, the white whale was at a disadvantage. The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan was at a loss for words again. Other than glaring at Leng Ruoxue, he could not find any words to defend himself. I'm fine. The white whale rubbed its large head against Leng Ruoxue's arm. "Little white whale, can you let me have this guy?" Feng Zhan, who had been watching the show for a long time, suddenly interrupted. Bai Jing looked at Feng Zhan, then at the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. He shook his head and said, "You can't." In fact, what it wanted to say was, "You are not this guy's match." "Little white whale, let it have it," Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. When White Whale heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he thought about it for a moment and nodded in agreement. Following that, White Whale and Leng Ruoxue retreated from the battle. As for the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan, she was infuriated when she saw that her opponent had changed. "What are you guys doing? Is this a tag team battle?" The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan roared out in rage. He was extremely displeased with the fact that they had switched opponents halfway through their journey. After all, he had already seen the victorious Tian Huan draw closer to his side. If not for Leng Ruoxue's interference, he might have already won. The more she thought about it, the angrier the Phoenix ancestor became. The flames on her body instantly burned, turning half the sky red. Feng Zhan didn't even lift his eyes when he saw this. He just threw a pill to the man and said, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Seeing that you've used up a bit of your divine power, I'll give you this divine power replenishing pill. This should be fine, right? What the hell are you doing?" Feng Zhan's words didn't satisfy the old phoenix. Instead, it made him more cautious. He didn't know what this phoenix was up to, and more importantly, this phoenix looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. In reality, Feng Zhan was doing this because his thoughts were similar to Leng Ruoxue's. He hoped that these beastie would accept their defeat. As a beastie that had a contract with Leng Ruoxue, it naturally knew Leng Ruoxue's intentions and was very willing to cooperate. Therefore, of course, it hoped that the phoenix in front of it could enjoy the service of a home. However, it seemed that the phoenix was a little frightened. Ugh! Had it overreached itself? Feng Zhan was a little depressed. He was also blaming this little guy for not knowing what was good for him. Did it have to do this? He would have directly started beating him up. At that thought, Feng Zhan said in a bad mood, "What can I do? It's all because you guys are always unwilling to admit defeat. If you don't want to admit defeat, then let's fight again. I'll also replenish the divine power you used on the little white whale. If you lose again, you have nothing to say, right?" Chapter 2196:1 against 3, 1, Humph. Do you think I will lose to you? The ancestor of the Feng clan laughed mockingly as he looked at Feng Zhan's strength. Although Feng Zhan was also a member of the Feng clan, he was weaker than the ancestor. How dare he say that he would have nothing to say if he lost? What a joke! How could he lose to a phoenix whose strength was inferior to his? If this news were to spread, wouldn't he become a laughingstock in the divine realm? The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more she despised Feng Zhan. Feng Zhan, on the other hand, was very calm, and there was no sign of anger on his face. Then, Feng Zhan smiled faintly. Little guy, it's good to be confident, but overconfidence is terrible. Although my strength is not as good as yours, I may not lose to you. Feng Zhan was very confident about this. Although there was a difference of 1 rank between him and this little phoenix, who was it? It was the personal guard of the Phoenix King back in the day, and was considered a genius-level beast in the Phoenix clan. It was only a step away from becoming a godly venerable rank beast. In addition to its deep foundation, it did not dare to say that it could defeat this little fellow with a 100% chance, but it was at least 50 to 60% confident. Thinking of this, Feng Zhan looked at the old ancestor with a gentle gaze, but he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When the tiger is not at home, the monkey will become the king. After the Great War that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago, this young man had already become one of the phoenix kind's ancestors. In the past, these little guys were still babies. Time really did not spare beasts. Feng Zhan felt that he was getting old, but he was still young. Especially after seeing this little fellow from the Phoenix clan, he was still excited. The old ancestor of the Feng clan felt the fire in Feng Zhan's eyes. He didn't know why, but he was extremely nervous. Why was this old phoenix looking at him with such an ambiguous gaze? Could it be that she had some thoughts about him? In fact, he had found out the truth. Feng Zhan did have some thoughts about him, but of course, it wasn't the kind that he was thinking about. But before he could think further, Feng Zhan flew into the air, circled around, and then swooped down at the old ancestor. Seeing this, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan immediately returned to her original form and charged forward. In an instant, the 2 fiery red phoenixes tangled together, and the 2 phoenixes fiercely collided, scattering countless sparks and falling from the sky like meteors. In an instant, the temperature around them suddenly rose. When Leng Ruoxue and the rest saw this, they immediately moved to a safe area. The battle between the other 5 pairs of reverent god-level spiritual beasts had also stopped because of the 2 phoenixes that were fighting in their true forms. At this moment, they were all in human form. Therefore, the high temperature created by the 2 phoenixes made them extremely unhappy, especially Uncle Long. He was so angry that he wanted to curse. He was a beast in the water, and what he hated the most was fire. However, these 2 did not have any self-awareness at all. This was preposterous. The furious Uncle Long said to his opponent, "Let's discuss something. Let's stay away from them." He really couldn't take it anymore. Thanks, it was Long Ju who was fighting Uncle Long. After hearing Uncle Long's words, Long Ju nodded. Then, the 2 of them teleported in the direction furthest from the 2 phoenixes in tacit understanding. Although the temperature within 100 miles had risen because of the battle between the 2 phoenixes, it was naturally much stronger to be further away from them. Seeing this, the other reverent god-level cultivators also changed the battlefield and continued their battle. As a member of the audience, Leng Ruoxue was feeling extremely depressed. This was because the others were all engaged in a heated battle while she could only watch from the side. This fact caused her emotions to be extremely unstable. When the demon saw this, he quickly pulled Leng Ruoxue into his arms and comforted her. "Shuer, do you want me to play with you?" "No need. I'm going to wait and see who will win. I'll go fight with whoever wins." Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes scanned the 6 reverent god-level cultivators. She had already started to think about them. Among the 6 pairs of reverent god-level cultivators, according to Leng Ruoxue's observation, the one who would lose first would most likely be Lian Jia. It was the hierarch who had been killed by the monstrous genius. Although he was no match for the monstrous genius, he could easily defeat Lien Zhe. After all, there was a clear difference in strength between a hierarch human and a hierarch beast. Unless a hierarch human was stronger than a hierarch beast, it would be difficult for a hierarch human to defeat a hierarch beast of the same level. As for Lien Zhe, he was slightly weaker than this hierarch of the beast race in terms of strength. Therefore, his defeat was only a matter of time. However, it was already not easy for Lien Zhe to persist for so long. A little. Leng Ruoxue, who had been waiting for a long time, finally saw that Lien Zhe was showing signs of defeat. Without a second thought, she rushed forward and replaced Lien Zhe, who had exhausted his physical strength and divine power. You can rest on the side, leave this guy to me. Leng Ruoxue ordered Lien Zhe. Hearing this, Lien Zhe nodded his head and resentfully withdrew from the battle. The hierarch widened his eyes in anger and said in dissatisfaction, "Do you guys really want to take turns?" "Of course not. However, you haven't fought with us yet, so even if you win 1 or 2 rounds, you can't leave. Unless you beat us all to the ground, you won't be able to leave." Leng Ruoxue said honestly. This was a group battle to begin with. Leng Ruoxue smirked. Hearing this, the hierarch of the beast clan was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at them. Then, he said in disbelief, "Humans are really scoundrels. They can even say such words. You're a scoundrel just like this. Don't tell me that the 6 of you think that you can retreat in one piece after defeating one of us. Can I say that you guys are too naive and think too simply?" Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at her opponent innocently. She wanted these beastie to be convinced, but she had never thought of letting them leave. Humph. Since he was already here, he could only be her possession. No way. The pitiful hierarch was so angry that he almost vomited blood when he saw Leng Ruoxue acting innocent. Only now did he realize that the man and woman in front of him were not good people. They were indeed a family. One was brutal and violent, while the other was cunning and multi-layered. Now, he was very regretful. Why did he have to get involved in this mess? Isn't it better to hug your wife and child at home? Sob. At this moment, he wanted to cry but had no tears. Seeing that her opponent did not react for a long time, Leng Ruoxue assumed that he had been provoked. Then, she said with a face full of sympathy, "Come, let's not waste any more time. Let's continue fighting." She had been waiting for a long time for an opponent to appear, so she couldn't let him go. At this moment, the hierarch, who had felt that he was very miserable, finally reacted. Then, he said in a very aggrieved tone, "I just had a fight, so I can't fight you now. It's not fair to me." Chapter 2197:1 against 3, 2, then what do you want? Leng Ruoxue blinked her eyes and asked. "I request to rest." The reverent god said matter-of-factly. "How long do you need to rest?" Leng Ruoxue was very patient. The reverent god thought for a moment. Just as he said one word, he was interrupted by the anxious Leng Ruoxue. 1 minute. Leng Ruoxue said on purpose. The reverent god was speechless. He could only look at Leng Ruoxue, unable to say a word. He could not understand how this human woman could think of 1 minute. Was there a need for him to specifically request for 1 minute? Was he sick? Then 10 per minute? Leng Ruoxue asked again. His opponent, the reverent god, was still speechless. An hour? Leng Ruoxue saw that he was not saying anything and could only continue asking. 1 day. I want to rest for a day. I'll fight with you tomorrow. His opponent couldn't take it anymore and roared. His face was red as he glared at Leng Ruoxue. It was as if he would never let Leng Ruoxue off if she dared to reject him. Upon seeing this, Leng Ruoxue said in an infuriating manner, "It's only been a day. You've spent so much effort just to ask for a day's rest. Hee hee. The requirements were really not high. However, I can't agree to that. I don't have that much time to waste on you." This time, the reverend god was so angry that he could not speak. He glared at Len Ruoxue as if his eyes were spewing fire. However, Len Ruoxue was not bothered at all. She continued, I can give you two choices. 1. Let you rest for an hour. 2. You can buy a divine power recovery pill from me, and we will fight immediately. Is there a third option? Hearing this, the reverend god was stunned for a long time before he asked in a daze. I'm sorry, I don't have it. Len Ruoxue said with certainty. Little guy, since Nyo let you choose, you should quickly choose, what's the point of wasting time? At this time, Azure interrupted. Choose what? He didn't want to choose any of them, a certain divine master thought to himself. He didn't want to fight with this human woman at all. However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. Otherwise, who knew what kind of tragedy would happen? Seeing that the reverend god in front of him wasn't decisive at all, Azure was a little angry and directly roared, otherwise, you can fight with me. Hearing Tsung's words, the hierarch's heart trembled. Fuck. He didn't want to mess with this rabbit even more, okay? That. I admit defeat, okay? After thinking for a long time, the hierarch of the beast race said with a desperate look. No. Len Ruoxue and Tsung shouted in unison. Once he finished speaking, Tsung happily jumped into Len Ruoxue's arms and affectionately rubbed against her. He then said excitedly, Girl, our hearts are as one as expected. Get lost. Cold's words infuriated Evil. Then, he chased after Cold and started fighting as if there was no one else around. Upon seeing this, Len Ruoxue's face was filled with black lines. She thought to herself, these two guys. Why are you all so willful? You don't even know when to fight. Thanks. On the other hand, the hierarch of the beast race was thinking, is this considered an internal strife? However, he didn't dare to ask the question in his heart. Moreover, he knew that if he really asked, this man and beast might point their spears at him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help rejoicing in his heart. However, how should he deal with this human woman in front of him? Looking at Len Ruoxue's determined look, he was really having a headache. He couldn't understand why this woman had her eyes on him. I choose to rest for an hour. During this time, you can go and find someone else to fight. The dejected hierarch pondered for a long time before he came up with the idea of shifting the blame to someone else. He believed that the human woman would not keep an eye on him after fighting with someone else, so he could not care less about friendship at this time. There's no rush. You can rest. I'll wait for you at the side. After we're done fighting, I'll go find whoever wins. Len Ruoxue smiled when she heard the Supreme Divinity's suggestion. Hearing this, the reverend god immediately became listless. What was she doing sticking to him? The two of them stared at each other for the rest of the time. When Len Ruoxue saw that her opponent wasn't saying anything, she naturally wouldn't try to strike up a conversation. Under her glare, the reverend god started to break out in cold sweat. Half an hour later, Dongfang Yu and Uncle Long had both defeated their opponents. The two of them came to Len Ruoxue's side at the same time. Uncle Long even asked with a concerned look, Little girl, did this guy bully you? Don't be afraid, Uncle Long is here, I will help you deal with him. The he that Uncle Long was referring to was the hierarch that Len Ruoxue had her eyes on. When he heard this, his face turned black with anger. Dongfang Yu looked at the hierarch with sympathy and said, Yes, count me in. Don't fight with me, I was the one who decided on this guy first. Len Ruoxue panicked and said hurriedly. Girl, you're a girl. It's not good for you to fight and kill. Let Uncle Long do it for you. Uncle Long said with a smile. No. Absolutely not. I haven't had enough fun today. You're not allowed to snatch it from me. When Uncle Long and Dongfang Yu saw this, the two of them actually laughed out loud at the same time, especially Dongfang Yu. Never in his dreams would he have thought that in such a critical moment, he would be able to talk and laugh so easily. His mood was so relaxed. This was simply too unbelievable. However, the unlucky hierarch's mood plummeted when he saw the three of them interacting so happily. He couldn't understand. What was this? Weren't they here to help? However, since they had arrived here, their actions had been restricted. They even had to listen to the other party's arrangements in how they fought. This had greatly hurt the pride of a certain supreme divinity who had always been able to call the wind and summon the rain in his clan. But what he didn't understand was why things had turned out this way. He probably wouldn't be able to figure it out in a short period of time. Originally, it was only Leng Ruoxue who was staring at him. Now, with the addition of the two strongest reverent god-level cultivators, the pressure on him increased exponentially. Although the other party's line of sight was not on him at all, he still felt flustered and uneasy in his heart. Sure enough, not long after, another person from their side was defeated. It was the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan. The old phoenix looked as if it had just suffered a huge blow, and the bright and beautiful feathers on its body had all dimmed down. The Phoenix clan's ancestor, who had taken on a human form, was even more dejected and listless, with his head drooped down, as if his mind had once again drifted away into outer space. To put it simply, he had been beaten silly. At this moment, only two pairs of reverent god-level cultivators were still fighting. Chapter 2198:1 against 3. Immediately, everyone's eyes turned to the two pairs of reverent god-level cultivators. One of them was the black-robed hierarch from the beast race, while the other was the white-robed man from the white tiger race. His opponent was Uncle Lien. The hierarch in black was more powerful than Dongfang Lin, so Dongfang Yu was quite pleased that Dongfang Lin had been able to hold on for so long. His younger brother had never liked to fight since he was young. However, his younger brother had grown up a lot during his imprisonment. At least, he now had the strength to fight against the hierarch of the beast race, who was known for his combat skills. As for Uncle Lien, his strength should be on par with that reverent god from the white tiger race. It would be normal for either of them to win or lose. However, based on the current situation, the battle was not in Uncle Lien's favor. After being imprisoned for so long, Uncle Lien's bodily functions and his grasp of the rhythm of the battle had clearly not recovered to his peak. On the other hand, the white-robed man was still able to deal with Uncle Lien with ease. As time passed, Uncle Lien's Shen power was gradually overdrawn. Not long after, Uncle Lien admitted defeat. However, even though the white-robed man had defeated Uncle Lien, he did not expect that his next opponent would be Leng Ruoxue. The man in white was stunned for a long time after hearing the bad news. He only came to his senses when the hierarch in black defeated Dongfang Lin and came to his side. Long Ao. We still have to fight that girl. The white-robed man tugged at the hierarch's lapels as he cried. Damn it. You let go of me. The hierarch in black, Long Ao, glanced at the man in white's hand and growled with a dark face. He ignored the man in white's words. Fuck. What was this? Did he have to be so girly? Long Ao cursed in his heart. The man in white noticed Long Ao's darkened face and knew that his actions were inappropriate. He quickly retracted his hand. Woo! Long Ao is so fierce. Among the few of them, he was most afraid of Long Ao. Usually, when that guy glared at him, he would be as obedient as a wife. However, he still looked at Long Ao pitifully, hoping that he could give them an idea. He did not want to fight with that girl anymore. That wretched girl was too cunning. Long Ao sighed helplessly to himself. Then, he turned his gaze to Leng Ruoxue and asked, You still want to fight us? I'm not fighting with you guys. I'm fighting with the winner among you. Leng Ruoxue emphasized. You want to fight 1 against 3? Or are we going to fight you one by one? Long Ao asked after thinking for a while. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with saying such things to a human who was only at the God Emperor level. His instincts told him that Leng Ruoxue was very strong. Therefore, he did not dare to let his guard down. As expected, when Leng Ruoxue heard his words, she smiled radiantly and praised him, You're indeed the strongest among the 6 of you. Your ability to accept things is stronger than theirs. Thank you for the compliment. I just don't want to deceive myself. I know that you won't let us go so easily. Long Ao was very clear about this. He had never thought that he could leave after winning, because that was not realistic. In fact, when the human woman dared to suggest that they fight again, he knew that their ending was already set. The reason why the human woman did this was probably to make them feel better. Otherwise, she would not have to do this. If I say that I want to fight 1 against 3, will you think that I'm overestimating myself? Leng Ruoxue asked with a smile. I won T. Long Ao replied with certainty. His answer not only surprised Long Chen and the others, but also Dongfang Yu and the others. If that's the case, then let's fight 1 against 3. Let's not waste too much time. If I can't defeat you in 100 rounds, I'll let you go. I won't pursue the matter of you helping rhyme, but if I win, from now on, you must listen to my commands. How is it? Leng Ruoxue said confidently. Good. If we lose, we'll recognize you as our master. Long Ao agreed readily. In fact, he also wanted to see what kind of trump card this young human woman had to have such courage. When Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and Lien Zhe heard Leng Ruoxue's words, they were so nervous that their hearts were in their throats. Although Dongfang Yu kept warning himself to believe in Leng Ruoxue's decision, he was still a little worried. After all, the current situation was very good for them. Hence, he did not dare to imagine what would happen if. No, there was no if. Leng Ruoxue would definitely win. Otherwise, she would not be so certain. After steadying his wavering emotions, Dongfang Yu told himself with unusual certainty that he must believe in Leng Ruoxue's decision. Because she was Master Ye's disciple. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and Lien Zhe. She could tell that they were still in a dilemma. However, they did not object to her decision. She could not help but nod in satisfaction. Even though these 3 people still had room for improvement in their trust in her, this was still a good start, wasn't it? Thanks. The reason why she wanted to fight 1 against 3 was not because she overestimated herself. Although she was a divine emperor, according to Huan Chen, her divine power was only a little more than an ordinary reverent god level. As a result, she could fight a reverent god level. In addition, her life flame was a deadly weapon to any opponent, and it could kill all opponents in seconds. Thus, after seeking the opinions of Huan Chen, Green Vessel, and Sung, she decided to take down the 3 reverent god level experts in one fell swoop. In this way, he could intimidate Uncle Lien and the others while at it, and also increase their sense of belonging. After all, this world was ruled by the strong. Fighting 1 against 3, a divine emperor against 3 hierarch-level beasts. This sounded like a dark lake in the sky, and everyone would find it unbelievable. However, to Leng Ruoxue, it was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Firstly, she could better display her strength in front of Uncle Lien and the others. Secondly, she could make these beastie convinced from the bottom of their hearts. Why not? As she thought of this, the smile on Leng Ruoxue's face became even more dazzling. Following that, she said to Long Ao and the other 2, I'll give you half an hour to rest. Our battle will officially begin after half an hour. This time, it was 1 against 3. She could finally have enough fun, right? Leng Ruoxue laughed to herself. To think that she had the potential to be a battle fanatic. When Long Ao heard Leng Ruoxue's words, he said, no need. You're fighting 1 against 3. If we're resting, that's a bit too much. Then let's start now. Leng Ruoxue replied. Long Ao nodded, then gave the man in white and the reverent god who thought he was in trouble a look. The 3 of them jumped to the spacious area at the same time and formed a formation. When Leng Ruoxue saw this, she also jumped into the battle. When Uncle Long and the others saw this, they quickly found a good angle to watch the battle. In the middle of the battle, a beautiful woman with 3 handsome men standing opposite her. This scene was as pleasing to the eye as it could get. Then, the woman moved. In an instant, Several rays of majestic fire-type divine power were released from Leng Ruoxu's hands and flew towards the white-robed man. The white-robed man saw this and quickly defended himself. Long Ao and the other hierarch took the opportunity to launch their attacks. When Leng Ruoxu saw this, she calmly set up a water screen in front of her, easily blocking the opponent's attack. However, the white-robed man would not be able to block her attack so easily. Moreover, this time, in order to convince the other party, she didn't use her divine power to condense a phoenix or a dragon. Instead, she directly released the divine power that had been injected into her life flame. This kind of Shin power was even more powerful. As if they had intelligence, the Shin power split into 3 groups and attacked the man in white from 3 different directions. For a moment, the man in white was flustered. He could not look left or right, and he could not look up or down. In the blink of an eye, the white-robed man was surrounded by Leng Ruoxu's fire-based divine power. Long Ao and the other reverent god did not even have time to save him. The white-robed man's body burst into flames. A painful tiger's roar could be heard from within the flames. Ow! It hurts. The man in white fell to the ground and rolled around in pain. He was forced to return to his original form. When Long Ao saw this, he immediately wanted to step forward, but he was frightened by the high temperature of the flame. What kind of flame was this? Why was the temperature even higher than the natal flame of the phoenix kind, the Nanling Li fire? This was truly unbelievable. At the thought of this, Long Ao turned his gaze to the hierarch of the beast race, who was also shocked. The person beside him was one of the 2 Phoenix clan's elders who had come with them. His disbelieving gaze immediately made Long Ao's heart sink to the bottom. However, Leng Ruoxu would not give them any time to worry. She immediately sent out a few more rays of fire attribute divine power. This time, her target was the hierarch of the Phoenix clan who thought that he was unlucky. The hierarch of the Phoenix clan, who was slightly distracted, was hit by Leng Ruoxu's divine power before he could react. He fell to the ground and lost consciousness. Ugh! Wasn't his attack a little too heavy? When Leng Ruoxu saw this, she couldn't help but worry. These beasts were going to be her underlings. If they were to be severely injured, wouldn't she be the one to suffer the loss? However, she couldn't understand how this person had become so fragile. She had actually been knocked down by her in an instant. This made her feel no sense of accomplishment. In reality, a hierarch couldn't possibly be so weak. However, the unfortunate hierarch's southern spirit Li fire immediately retreated when it was attacked by Leng Ruoxu's natal flame. When the southern spirit Li fire retreated, Leng Ruoxu's natal flame naturally wouldn't let the hierarch escape. Just like that, the natal flame chased after the hierarch's body, turning it into a battlefield. Thus, in a short period of time, the hierarch was already suffering. Even though he was a fire attribute beastie, he couldn't withstand such an intense collision in his body. Therefore, he was so embarrassed that he fainted from the fire. Chapter 2199, The Hearing, 1. At the same time, the white-robed man who was forced to return to his original form could not withstand the high temperature and fainted. With 2 moves, Leng Ruoxu managed to kill 2 opponents. This powerful combat strength left Uncle Lien and the others dumbfounded. One should know that both of Leng Ruoxu's opponents were Reverend God level. They weren't insignificant figures, but the fact that 2 Reverend God level experts had been defeated in 2 moves was too shocking. In reality, Leng Ruoxu was able to defeat her opponents so easily all because of her sharp and ferocious natal flame. If it wasn't for the fact that her natal flame was too overbearing, she wouldn't have been able to defeat 2 Reverend God level experts so easily no matter how talented she was. However, a win was a win, and her natal flame was an inseparable part of Leng Ruoxu. Hence, Leng Ruoxu did not feel that relying on her powerful flame to win was cheating. However, if she did not use her natal flame, it was absolutely impossible for her to win a 1-on-3 battle. Even if she didn't lose too badly, she was afraid that both sides would suffer. When Long Ao saw how sharp Leng Ruoxu's attack was, other than being shocked, he also began to pay more attention to her. He smiled faintly and said to Leng Ruoxue, "You're worthy of me using all my strength. Come on." Leng Ruoxue laughed. Then, Long Ao became even more serious. He even returned to his original form. Instantly, a huge golden dragon occupied more than half of the sky. When Leng Ruoxue saw this, she also floated into the air and looked at the golden dragon. However, compared to the golden dragon's huge body, Leng Ruoxue was still a little petite. Looking at the golden giant dragon that was many times bigger than her, Leng Ruoxue was a little unhappy. In terms of imposing manner, she was too weak. It was a pity that humans were unable to control the size of their bodies freely. Otherwise, she would not have allowed this old dragon to be the only one in the limelight. But now, she could only let this old dragon be in the limelight. With this thought in mind, Leng Ruoxue decided to jump onto Long Ao's back. When Long Ao saw this, he immediately shook his huge body up and down, trying to get rid of the little person on his back. However, Leng Ruoxue would not do as he wished so easily. She sat down and her beautiful, white hands firmly grabbed onto Long Ao's wings. Then, no matter how he flipped and turned, she sat on it as steady as a mountain. When Uncle Lien and the rest saw this, they could not understand what Leng Ruoxue was up to. "What's this little girl doing?" Uncle Lien asked with a blank look on his face. Leng Ruoxue always did things that no one could understand. However, after witnessing how Leng Ruoxue dealt with the two hierarch-level beasts, his confidence in her had increased greatly. But now, he couldn't figure it out. "She's riding on the dragon's back. Can't you tell?" Uncle Long said with a smile. "Ah. Of course I can tell. I'm asking why she's riding on the dragon's back." Uncle Lien said helplessly. "Dragon taming." At this time, Tsung's voice rang in Uncle Lien's ears. Hearing these two words, Uncle Lien still didn't quite understand. Couldn't they just defeat the dragon directly? Was there a need to do this? However, he didn't dare to ask this question again. Otherwise, who knew what kind of reaction that rabbit would have? At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who had been in a stalemate with Long Ao, suddenly moved again. A sword as thin as a cicada's wing and emitting a cold light appeared in Leng Ruoxue's hand. Thanks, Leng Ruoxue held the sharp sword in her hand and swiftly stabbed it towards Long Ao's back. With a crisp ding, the treasured sword only left a shallow white mark on Long Ao's tough dragon scales. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue could not help but exclaim, "This skin is not bad. Thanks for the compliment." Long Ao replied speechlessly. In reality, even though Leng Ruoxue's attack did not cause too much damage to his dragon scales, he felt an intense pain in his body. It was a pain that pierced his heart and bones, a pain that reached his soul. However, he could not show it. From the corner of its eyes, it could not help but steal a glance at the sword in Leng Ruoxue's hand. At first glance, the sword did not seem to have any special features, but why did it hurt so much when it was stabbed? Long Ao couldn't figure it out. This shouldn't be the case, right? This was too illogical. It knew better than anyone else just how hard its dragon scales were. In the entire divine realm, there were not many divine weapons that could harm it, and for magical beasts, any part of their bodies was their weapon. For example, the dragon breath, dragon scales, and dragon claws on their bodies. Once a supreme emperor-level divine beast was promoted to a godly venerable rank, the weapons they had would definitely be better than the divine weapons made by human craftsmen. Moreover, their weapons were born with them, so they would naturally have the highest degree of compatibility with them. Therefore, Long Ao, who was extremely confident in his own weapons and equipment, was a little unsettled after he suffered internal injuries. However, it tried its best to hide it and did not want to show it. Whose scale is tougher, you or your current dragon emperor? Leng Ruoxue suddenly asked again. Ah. Of course it's the dragon emperor. The dragon emperor's strength is the highest in our clan. Even though Long Ao did not understand why Leng Ruoxue had asked him this question, he still replied in a very serious manner. Oh. If I have the chance, I'll definitely go and take a few of his scales and make a set of armor for myself. Leng Ruoxue mumbled to herself. When Long Ao heard this, he was speechless and lost for words. Just as Long Ao was distracted, Leng Ruoxue used her sword to stab at his thick and hard dragon scales. Although she only left a few scratches on his body, Leng Ruoxue seemed to be addicted to it. Long Ao's heart twitched in pain, but he forced himself to not show any signs of pain. When Leng Ruoxue saw it, she thought that it really didn't hurt at all. Then, she jumped down from the dragon's back with a depressed look on her face and floated in the air. Immediately after, several rays of fiery red divine power passed through the thin tip of the sword and flew rapidly towards Long Ao. Instantly, Long Ao's heart turned pale with fright. The heat of the flames still left a lingering fear in its heart. It was also clear that its two companions had been defeated by Leng Ruoxue's flames. Hence, the moment it saw the flames, it immediately became alert. At the same time, it spat out a scorching dragon's breath. When Leng Ruoxue saw the dragon's breath, she neither dodged nor dodged. Instead, she allowed the dragon's breath to hit her body. In an instant, the dragon's breath had engulfed Leng Ruoxue. When Uncle Lien and the others saw this, they immediately cried out in alarm. Heavens! Quickly hide! Uncle Lien was so anxious that he jumped up. He wished he could go and help Leng Ruoxue. However, the evildoer held down the anxious Uncle Lien and glared at him unhappily. What's the hurry? Don't ruin Shuai'er's plans. Ah! Upon hearing this, Uncle Lien blinked his eyes in grievance. How did he ruin that girl's plans? He wanted to help. Chapter 2200, The Hearing, 2, but the next second, Uncle Lien fell silent. This was because he had seen with his own eyes how Leng Ruoxue, who had been bathed in the dragon's breath, had actually absorbed it. She had even let out a sigh of satisfaction as if she had just eaten a delicious meal. Not only were Uncle Lien and the others stunned by this scene, even Long Ao was dumbfounded. Even if the temperature of his dragon breath was not as high as that of this girl's flame, it could not be absorbed by others so easily. Long Ao was even more unsettled. All of a sudden, it felt a bone-piercing pain from its body. It was even more intense than before. At this moment, it suddenly realized that it had forgotten about Leng Ruoxue's deadly flames because it was too shocked that Leng Ruoxue had absorbed its dragon breath. This kind of distraction was absolutely a great taboo in a battle, and now, it was suffering the consequences of its own actions. In an instant, a purple flame that was half the height of a human rose from Long Ao's body. The flame quickly enveloped Long Ao, and Long Ao, who was in the midst of the flame, naturally felt as if he had fallen into hell. The searing heat and the overwhelming pain would soon drown Long Ao. Soon after, he lost consciousness again. He unconsciously twisted his huge body and crashed into the wall of the underground city as if it could alleviate the pain. When Uncle Lien saw this, he couldn't help but shout, "Don't hit the wall, damn it!" However, the clear awareness in Long Ao's mind had long been replaced by the boundless pain. Therefore, he did not know what he had done at all. At this time, all his actions were based on his instinct. Soon, Long Ao passed out. Seeing this, Uncle Lien's heart, which had been in his throat, finally settled down. It was a good thing that the walls of the buried city were quite strong, and it was also a good thing that the old dragon had fainted. Otherwise, if the dragon had crashed into the walls for a while longer, the walls of the buried city would have to retire in glory. At the thought of this, Uncle Lien could not help but wipe away the cold sweat on his forehead. There was now a hint of respect in his eyes as he looked at Leng Ruoxue. Yes. It was reverence. 3 Reverend God level experts had been easily killed by Leng Ruoxue. This was such a miraculous thing. It was also something he didn't even dare to imagine. At least, he admitted that he did not have that ability. Yet, Leng Ruoxue had done it. Furthermore, it was done with the strength of a divine emperor. If this little girl were to advance to Reverend God level, then wouldn't none of the Reverend God level cultivators in the divine realm be her match? This fact made Uncle Long's heart, which was filled with respect for Leng Ruoxue, burned with passion. Leng Ruoxue was truly Master Ye's disciple. She already had such strength at such a young age. It was laughable that they had looked down on her just because she was a woman. Now that they thought about it, Uncle Lien's old face was burning. He really wanted to find a hole to hide in. AI. They had really misjudged Leng Ruoxue. However, at this moment, Uncle Lien also secretly decided that he must follow this girl's footsteps closely in the future. Even if she was impatient with them, they had to stay by her side. Otherwise, they might really be estranged from her. Thanks, Uncle Lien's wish was beautiful, but reality was cruel. Leng Ruoxue and the people around her were vengeful. His wish to follow Leng Ruoxue's footsteps would not be easily realized. In the following period of time, Leng Ruoxue's spiritual beasts took the initiative to clean up the battlefield. All the spiritual beasts that were unconscious were piled up into a pile. As for Long Ao and the other two who were unconscious, they were left alone. Aya! Why is the spine so hot? Uncle Long walked over to Long Ao's group of 3 and glanced at their miserable state. But, he's still alive. Uncle Long added. Hearing this, Long Ju couldn't help but roll his eyes. He thought to himself, isn't she still breathing? That girl was still counting on them to recognize her as their master, so she naturally wouldn't kill them. However, he really sympathized with these 3 guys. Although he had lost the battle, compared to the 3 of them were definitely lucky. It was also wise of them not to choose Leng Ruoxue as their opponent back then. Otherwise, there would be 3 more reverent god-level cultivators lying on the ground. At this moment, Long Ju could not describe his feelings towards Leng Ruoxue. His feelings were rather complicated. Although Leng Ruoxue had defeated Long Ao and the other 2 because of her terrifying flame, that was also her own ability, wasn't it? If he had such a flame, he might have been overjoyed to the point where he couldn't even find the north. In comparison, Leng Ruoxue seemed to be keeping a low profile. At the thought of this, Long Ju's gaze could not help but turn towards Leng Ruoxue, who was standing calmly at her original spot. He did not feel any rejection towards the fact that she was about to become his master. However, he felt that this was because the strong were respected. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue didn't say anything for them to acknowledge her as their master. Instead, she turned around and walked into the underground city. Once she left, the demon and the rest naturally wouldn't stay outside. In an instant, only Leng Ruoxue's beastie, Dongfang Lin, Dongfang Yu, Uncle Lien, and the other captives were left outside the huge city gate. The reason Dongfang Lin and the other 2 stayed behind was naturally to deal with the captives. The 2 leaders and Yaoji were directly locked up in the deep underground prison by Dongfang Lin. Long Chen and the others were invited into the guest house. Of course, their movements were also restricted to a certain extent. In the days that followed, Dongfang Lin and the others seemed to have forgotten about their existence. No one came to the guest courtyard at all. Leng Ruoxue did not even appear at all. Long Ju and the others did not take this situation seriously at first, but as time passed, they were somewhat at a loss. Who would say that they would recognize a master, but not ask? Was he not afraid that they would run away? Of course, they definitely wouldn't dare to think of running away. However, the feeling of being ignored and being at a loss about the future wasn't a good feeling. On a certain day, the 3 reverent god-level experts who had passed out had finally woken up. Even though they had taken healing pills, it still took them several days to wake up. From this, it could be seen how badly injured they were at the time. After the initial confusion, the first thing they did when they woke up was to try their best to recall the situation of the battle. However, no matter how hard they racked their brains, there were always 1 or 2 pieces of memory that they couldn't remember. Later on, it was only when Long Ju recounted the battle scene to them that they had a slight impression. Then, the white-robed man, who was still in his original form, immediately checked his body. With one look, he cried, "Woo! Its snow-white, beautiful fur was gone. What replaced it was a body of black, bare skin. Its fur, its smooth and soft long fur, had disappeared without a trace. They were all burned by the scorching flame in his memory. Chapter 2201, The Hearing, 3, Wah! The originally beautiful white tiger cried so hard that it shook the heavens and the earth. Seeing this, Long Han and the others were all speechless. What's there to cry about? Didn't I also become a black phoenix? The Phoenix clan's supreme divinity tried to comfort the crying white tiger with a helpless look on his face. However, the white tiger didn't appreciate it. Instead, it complained angrily, "How can I be the same as you? I'm white. Moreover, even though you've turned black, your feathers are still there." Phoenixes could be reborn from the ashes, so their feathers were not afraid of fire. However, its fur was. This was also the main reason why it didn't like phoenixes. The hierarch of the Phoenix clan, who already felt that he was unlucky, felt aggrieved when he heard the white tiger's words. He couldn't help but mumble, "I said I would admit defeat." Yes. He didn't want to fight Leng Ruoxue at all. The impression of being instantly defeated by her man was too deep. Hence, he instinctively cowered in his room. The facts had also proven that his sixth sense was right. That little girl was just as terrifying. Compared to the monster who killed him in an instant, he was even better. Stop arguing. What's the point of complaining now? He had better think of a way to meet that girl. We've been ignored for quite a few days. Seeing that they were about to start quarreling, Long Ju hurriedly reminded them. What do you mean? Long Ao asked in confusion. We're captives now. After that girl had people throw us here, she didn't care about us anymore. Long Ju complained. Maybe. She's busy. Long Ao was calm when he heard Long Ju's words. I think she has forgotten about us. The white tiger said unhappily. The tone of its voice was full of resentment. Of course, it didn't realize it, and the others didn't think anything was wrong either. But in fact, their reactions were very abnormal. They seemed to have accepted the fact that they were about to have a master and were very dissatisfied with their master's cold treatment of them. However, they absolutely did not realize that the self-righteous beast even felt that it was acting like this because its pride had been hurt. Then what should we do? Should we take the initiative? The hierarch of the Phoenix clan suggested after hearing the white tiger's words. As soon as he said this, everyone present fell silent and fell into deep thought. After a long time, Long Ao said, "Let's go see that girl. After all, she will be our master in the future." All right. Upon hearing this, the others nodded their heads in unison. Then, the white tiger transformed back into its human form. After washing up, they prepared to leave the guest courtyard to meet Leng Ruoxue. However, before they could step out of the guest house, they discovered a very serious problem. They did not know where Leng Ruoxue was, and where could they go to meet her. Are you guys going out? Suddenly, a curious voice rang in their ears. Long Ao and the others raised their heads and saw Dongfang Lin and Dongfang Yu standing at the entrance of the guest courtyard. We want to go and see Leng Ruoxue. Long Ao laughed awkwardly. Oh. It just so happens that we're also planning to look for her, let's go together. Dongfang Lin said enthusiastically. Although he hadn't come to see them these past few days, he had arranged for people to monitor them in secret. He knew that they were very obedient, so he had temporarily put down his guard against them. He naturally knew why these people wanted to see Leng Ruoxue. In reality, his eldest brother had the same goal as them. However, those who went to see Leng Ruoxue recently were all denied entrance. Hearing that Dongfang Lin was willing to bring them to see Leng Ruoxue, the few headless supreme divinity beasts were naturally overjoyed. Then, they followed Dongfang Lin all the way to Leng Ruoxue's residence. After walking for a while, they had become much more familiar with the Dongfang brothers. Since both sides had the intention of befriending each other, they naturally had a pleasant conversation and were all happy. However, when they arrived at Leng Ruoxue's residence, only a few hierarch-level beasts were allowed to enter. Dongfang Yu was instantly depressed. As he watched the hierarch leave, Dongfang Lin patted his big brother's shoulder affectionately and consoled him. I think Shuer has something important to tell them since she agreed to meet them. Let's go back first. When Shuer has time, come again. All right. Dongfang Yu nodded dejectedly. He knew that what his brother said made sense, but the disappointment in his heart did not lessen much. However, who could he blame for this? At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who was in the living room of her own residence, naturally had no idea about Dongfang Yu's low mood. She was currently staring at several supreme gods of the beast race. The 6 hierarch-level beasts had come together. After they were invited into the living room and sat down, apart from Long Mo and Long Ao, who were relatively calm, the other 4 looked unusually nervous. There was still a faint trace of fear in their eyes as they looked at Leng Ruoxue. Every time Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept over them, their hearts would jump into their throats and they would be on tenterhooks. The pressure that Leng Ruoxue gave them was simply too great. Thanks when they thought of Leng Ruoxue's terrifying flames, their hands were trembling. Leng Ruoxue stared at them silently for a long time before she finally spoke. You guys came to see me just to stare at me? Leng Ruoxue teased him casually. Upon hearing this, 2 hierarchs couldn't sit still. Cold sweat trickled down their foreheads and their faces turned pale. Seeing them like this, Leng Ruoxue was even more bewildered. She tried her best to recall if she had done anything to them because one of them happened to be the Phoenix clan's old ancestor. However, no matter how much she thought about it, Leng Ruoxue didn't think that the Phoenix clan's old ancestor had any reason to be afraid of her. After all, the people who had taught him a lesson were the demon and Feng Zhan, and had nothing to do with her. As such, Leng Ruoxue felt that she had been wronged. The way she looked at the Phoenix clan's old ancestor also became a little unfriendly. After being glared at by Leng Ruoxue like a knife, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan shuddered. Then, he lowered his head subconsciously and did not even dare to lift it up. Seeing him like this, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh to herself. This reverent god of the Phoenix clan was so timid. At this moment, Long Ao, who had been calm all this while, looked at his useless companions with a headache. Then, he said to Leng Ruoxue directly, "We're here for the master recognition matter. There's no hurry. You won't be able to escape anyway." Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Ugh. You're not in a hurry, but we are. One had to know that it didn't feel good to be hung up like this. Moreover, they didn't want to live under someone else's roof. I wonder if Miss Leng has any other requests for us. Long Ao couldn't help but probe. After all, from his point of view, Leng Ruoxue wasn't in a hurry to make them recognize her as their master because she was still dissatisfied with them. Follow me. Leng Ruoxue did not answer Long Ao's question directly. Instead, she stood up and walked out of the living room. She led the way, while Long Ao and the rest followed behind her, not knowing what was happening. Leng Ruoxue led them around a few corners. Before long, she had brought the 6 of them to the underground prison. The light in the underground prison was extremely dim, and there was a trace of soil and blood smell. At this moment, the smell of blood was especially strong. The 6 of them were all people who had experienced hundreds of battles. Naturally, they were not surprised by such a place. However, they did not know why Leng Ruoxue had brought them here. Until Leng Ruoxue brought them to the door of one of the cells. There were 3 people locked up there, 2 men and 1 woman. Long Ao and the others naturally knew these 3 people. However, at this time, the 3 of them looked extremely miserable. Their clothes could no longer cover their bodies, and their bodies were a bloody mess. It was almost impossible to tell that they were human. Even Long Ao and the others, who had been through hundreds of battles, felt like vomiting when they saw them like this. Cute master, you've come. At this moment, Baby, who was guarding the prisoners in the cell, immediately jumped into Leng Ruoxue's arms when it saw her. Tsang, who was a step slower than it, immediately released its pressure in dissatisfaction and glared at Baby with a warning look. However, in front of its cute master, it naturally had its master's support, so although baby's little body was shaking very badly, it was not afraid of it. Seeing this, Tsang immediately felt that His Majesty was seriously challenged. He was about to increase the pressure, but in the next second, he fell into a warm and soft embrace. Instantly, the angry Tsang Mao was smoothened. Long Ao and the other hierarch felt helpless when they saw Tsang happily lying in Leng Ruox's arms and looking at the little purple fox that was occupying the other half of Leng Ruox's arms. It seemed like the competition between the beasts was very intense. Go in. Leng Ruoxu glanced at Long Ao and the rest, then took the lead to enter and find a place to sit down. Long Ao and the others also found their own places. At this moment, Uncle Long, who was in the corner, walked over and smiled at Leng Ruoxue. Shuer, are you going to start the interrogation? Yes. Leng Ruoxue nodded. Then, Uncle Long took the initiative to accept this task. He even had a small notebook in his hand. It was filled with all kinds of records. Of course, it was all about the performance of these three people. The reason why they had chosen to interrogate the three of them at this time was because Long Ao and the others had taken the initiative to come to their door. In fact, ever since the dust had settled, Leng Ruoxue had been waiting for them. As for the interrogation this time, it was specially arranged by Leng Ruoxue for Long Ao and the others to see. In the early stages of the interrogation, the three of them were naturally in deep trouble. When Long Ao and the rest heard the conversation between Leng Ruoxue and Uncle Long, they understood why Leng Ruoxue had brought them here. They were here for the hearing. Chapter 2202, Inside Story, 1. Moreover, it was probably not just for the hearing. Perhaps they wanted to use the mouths of these three people to tell them some other things. Long Ao had thought about this very clearly. At this time, Uncle Long looked at Long Ao and the others indifferently. Then, he turned his eyes to the two men and a woman who were tied to the pillar. The two men and the woman were unconscious. After Uncle Long fed them a pill, the three of them slowly woke up. Uncle Long had only given the three of them ordinary healing pills to ensure that they could be interrogated normally. Although their external injuries still looked very scary, in fact, their internal injuries were at least half healed. Yaoji had just woken up and was still not used to the dim light in the cell. After a short moment of confusion, her dazed eyes gradually focused. Then, she saw Leng Ruoxue sitting diagonally opposite her. Leng Ruoxue, you bitch. You actually dare to appear in front of me. Yaoji cursed at Leng Ruoxue the moment she saw her. The hatred in her eyes was so intense that Long Ao and the other five were in disbelief. What exactly did that last Leng Ruoxue do to that woman? Why did this woman have such a strong hatred for her? The six of them had only met Yaoji once, so they were not too clear about the grudge between her and Leng Ruoxue. However, from the looks of it, the grudge between the two of them seemed to run quite deep. But what puzzled them even more was that Leng Ruoxue didn't seem to have much of a reaction to Yaoji's curses. This was truly unbelievable. The few of them really wanted to stand up for Leng Ruoxue and teach this woman who spoke vulgarly a lesson. After all, Leng Ruoxue was going to be their master soon. No matter how deep the hatred between the two of them was, as Leng Ruoxue's beasts, they naturally could not allow anyone to insult their master. However, when they saw that the rabbit and the other beasts in the cell did not move after hearing her words, they did not dare to act rashly, in case they spoiled Leng Ruoxue's plans. However, this feeling of holding back was really uncomfortable. Yaoji, I don't understand. I saved your life, so why do you hate me so much? You're clearly repaying kindness with ingratitude, you're an ungrateful wolf. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue asked with a faint smile. She had already taken in Long Ao and the other five's reactions. Her question could be considered to have answered their doubts. Ingrate? Hee hee. So what if I'm an ingrate? So what if you saved me? Do you think I can't hate you because you saved me? I hate women who are prettier than me the most in my life. Even if she is my savior, I will not be grateful to her. What's more, you're the disciple of the highly regarded Master Yu, and you stole all my glory. That's why I hate you even more. Especially Dongfang Yu and the others, who were all bribed by you. They're all on your side, what about me? What am I in their eyes? I've been through so many hardships with them for so many years, and they abandoned me just like that. All of this is because of you. Yaoji roared madly. The hatred and madness in her eyes were frightening, but Long Ao and the others were speechless after hearing her words. However, Long Ao and the other 5 were smart enough not to ask any more questions and chose to continue listening. Thanks. Have you ever thought about why Dongfang Yu and the others were disappointed in you and why they abandoned you? Leng Ruoxua continued to ask. It's because I poisoned the people of the buried city. The poison wasn't heavy at all, and I did it to frame you. Why can't they understand me? At the mention of this, Yaoji's anger rose. In order to punish me, they even wanted to imprison me for life. It wasn't easy for me to escape from Rime Ice, how could I want to be locked up again? Don't even think about it. Yaoji added. You hate them too? Leng Ruoxua asked with a look of understanding. Right. I also hate them for treating me like this in order to please you. It'd be a wonder if I didn't hate them. Yaoji's voice was filled with hatred. They didn't do it to please me. They punished you because you've done something that disappointed them. For your own selfish reasons, you poisoned your own companion. I believe that no force would allow such a thing. Moreover, they've already shown you mercy for the sake of your many years of friendship. However, with your personality, it's only natural for others to be good to you. If they're bad to you, it's their fault. Right? Leng Ruoxua said indifferently. That's right. I've been through so many hardships with them for so many years, it's only right that they're good to me. Besides, why should I let a little girl like you ride on my head? You want me to serve you as my master? No way. Yaoji spoke the truth. Out of everyone present, she was the one who opposed Leng Ruoxua the most. Other than the fact that Leng Ruoxua was prettier than her, Leng Ruoxua also gave her a deep sense of danger. She felt that her special position in the hearts of Dongfang Yu and the others was seriously threatened. Therefore, she could not tolerate Leng Ruoxua's existence. This was probably the so-called repulsion of the opposite sex, and a mountain could not accommodate 2 tigresses. For Yaoji, only a woman with an extraordinary status like her was enough. Other women didn't need her. So, not only did you betray me, but you also betrayed your companion who had been through so many hardships with you? Don't you feel anything when you see your companion's junior die in front of you? Don't you feel guilty? Leng Ruoxua asked aggressively. They were the ones who let me down first, so why should I feel guilty? What's wrong with me selling them out? I was forced by them. Yaoji didn't think she was in the wrong. In her heart, she was the biggest victim and the most innocent one. Uncle Long, I'll leave the rest to you. After Leng Ruoxua asked what she wanted to know, she didn't want to talk to Yaoji anymore. Instead, she handed over the authority to continue the interrogation to Uncle Long. Uncle Long smiled and nodded. Then, he continued Leng Ruoxua's topic. What did you say to Wu Jing? Ha ha ha. I've told you everything I know. I've told her everything, including your identity, your location, the whereabouts of Dongfang Yu and the others, and this underground city. Oh right, and that Totoro. You must not have thought that when Wu Jing found out that we had seen the Totoro, she was so angry that she was about to explode. Yaoji laughed wildly. She would definitely answer all his questions and not hide anything. Because she was very clear that this time, she was doomed. Falling into their hands, they would never let her go. Since that was the case, she would not let them have an easy time either. She might as well tell them everything and let them live like stray dogs in the future. This was her plan. I don't know when you became so close to Rime. Your hatred seems to be even deeper, right? Uncle Long couldn't understand the structure of this woman's brain. How could she think of colluding with Wu Chen? What kind of way of thinking was this? Chapter 2203, Inside Story, 2, That's right. I do have a grudge against Wu Cheng, but the people I hate the most right now are you. So, of course, I have to get rid of you first. Yaoji answered truthfully. In fact, there was one more thing that she didn't mention. She didn't intend to join the Fog City. Instead, she was captured by the people of the Fog City after she escaped from the Black Fog City. She knew that she would definitely die if she fell into the hands of the Fog City. Since it was Leng Ruoxue and the others who caused her to fall into such a miserable state, why would she bother hiding their whereabouts for them? Therefore, she decided to use the information she knew in exchange for a chance to live. Who knew that after Wu Jing found out about this, although she didn't kill her, she almost sucked her blood dry, causing her to turn into a state that was neither human nor ghost. She thought that it was all because of Leng Ruoxue, so she blamed it all on Leng Ruoxue. Thus, she became even more hostile towards Leng Ruoxue. There was no lack of such people in this world. They couldn't see their own mistakes. Even if they did something wrong, they would find all kinds of reasons for themselves and put the blame on others, as if others were always wrong and they were always right. If others couldn't follow her wishes, it would be a great and unforgivable crime. Yaoji was exactly that kind of person. In the past, although she didn't see eye to eye with Wu Yan, the divine master Yu, who she had always admired, was still alive. Therefore, she would more or less hide her nature and didn't dare to go too far. But now that Master Yu had fallen and Wu Xian had become their mortal enemy, and she was the woman with the highest status on Dongfang Yu's side, her sense of superiority had been greatly enhanced. Leng Ruoxue's appearance had caused her to feel a strong sense of danger. She felt that the fruits of her victory were about to be snatched away and her position was about to be replaced by someone else. In her heart, the reason why Leng Ruoxue could easily gain the approval of others was because she was Master Ye's disciple. Without the halo of being Master Ye's disciple, no one would recognize Leng Ruoxue. It was precisely because of this thought that her mind was extremely distorted and unbalanced, which led to her series of actions later on. In short, it was all because of jealousy. Did the mist give you any benefits? Uncle Long couldn't help but ask. After hearing Yaoji's words, even someone as knowledgeable as him couldn't bear it. This woman was really too crazy. Fortunately, Uncle Long didn't know what Yaoji was thinking. Otherwise, he would be even more depressed and scared. However, even if Uncle Long didn't know, it didn't mean that Leng Ruoxue wouldn't know either. Qing Ju, who had been reading Yaoji's mind, had told her everything in detail. After she heard it, she had already sentenced Yaoji to death in her heart. However, she wouldn't let Yaoji die so easily. Ha ha ha. She promised to let me deal with Leng Ruoxue. Uncle Long's question made Yaoji laugh madly with extreme pride. Then, her eyes became dazed again. She had obviously fallen into some beautiful fantasy. You believe that? Leng Ruoxue, who had been listening for a long time, finally spoke indifferently. Why wouldn't I believe it? Do you know how much she wants to catch you? Ha ha ha. Even if you kill me, she won't let you go, because she already knows of your existence, and the people around you. If I die, you won't have a good life. Leng Ruoxue's cold words caused Yaoji to snap out of her daze. Then, she looked at Leng Ruoxue smugly, as if she had seen Leng Ruoxue's end. You don't have to worry about whether we'll have a good life or not. But I know that you'll definitely live in hell in the future. Leng Ruoxue said. She had already made up her mind. No matter if Yaoji was dead or alive, she would suffer in hell. There was no way she would die a happy death. She would definitely make Yaoji suffer a fate worse than death. You want me to live in hell? What right do you have? Do you think it's that easy to go to hell? Not only was Yaoji not afraid of Leng Ruoxue's words, but she was also disapproving of them. After all, only the dead could go to hell. She didn't think that Leng Ruoxue would bear to kill her. Seeing her like this, Uncle Long sympathized with her. Thanks, what right did Shuer have? Of course, it was because of the Dark Mistress' fiancé. Whoever he wanted to make suffer in hell, it was just a word from that evildoer. What an ignorant woman. He didn't even know Shuai's background and dared to betray her. If this wasn't courting death, what was? I don't know if it's easy to go to hell, but I'm sure you can go. After looking at Yaoji for a moment, Leng Ruoxue said with a half-smile. Humph. You don't need to scare me, just kill me if you want to, after all, people will eventually go there after they die. Yaoji said, fearlessly. Do you want to die? I'm sorry, but I'm afraid your wish won't come true. Leng Ruoxue said, feeling very troubled. I knew it, you can't bear to kill me. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Yaoji replied with a hint of pride. Clearly, she didn't understand the hidden meaning behind Leng Ruoxue's words, nor did she think that Leng Ruoxue wanted to send her to hell alive. However, Leng Ruoxue didn't care if Yaoji understood her or not. She gave Uncle Long a look, and the latter understood and knocked Yaoji unconscious again. Then, everyone's eyes turned to the two black-clothed leaders. The two men in black couldn't even pretend to be unconscious after taking the pills. They had also heard the conversation between Leng Ruoxue and Yaoji. They weren't stupid and knew what they wanted to say. However, due to their fear of fog ice, they didn't dare to say what they wanted to say like Yaoji. Are you going to tell me, or do you want me to ask? Uncle Long's dark and sharp eyes swept back and forth between the two black-clothed leaders as he spoke indifferently. We, the two leaders stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. Pa! With a crisp sound, a black and shiny whip appeared in Uncle Long's hand. The whip was as thick as a baby's arm, covered with sharp spikes and emitting a bloody smell. Some of the spikes even had a few pieces of minced meat hanging on them, which was creepy to look at. At this moment, the whip was still cracking from Uncle Long's strikes, making it even more eerie. As for the two black-robed men, when they saw the black whip, they began to tremble unconsciously, their eyes revealing an intense fear. Do you want me to ask? Uncle Long asked again as he swung the long whip in his hand. The evildoer had lent him the whip. In his words, it was the soul-beating whip used only in the 9 Nether prison. It was mainly used to whip the souls of prisoners or those who had committed heinous crimes. The person who was being beaten could not bear the pain that went deep into his soul. Even a reverent god could not escape. Chapter 2204, Inside Story, 3. After testing it a few times, Uncle Long found that the whip was indeed useful. Therefore, he almost never left his hand when he was in the cell. When he had nothing to do, he would use the whip to scare the two leaders. As a result, when they saw the whip now, they were instinctively afraid. I said, I'll confess. A leader of the men in black couldn't stand the fear and immediately gave in. Although they were afraid of his lord was far away and beyond their reach. But now, they had fallen into the hands of these evil demons. If he did not tell them the truth, he did not know what kind of torture he would be subjected to. These days, they were really scared of the torture. You should have been this obedient earlier. Uncle Long nodded in satisfaction. Master, the leader of the men in black had only said a few words when he heard Uncle Long's voice. Huh? He was so frightened that he immediately changed his words, it's not my lord, it's Rhyme. Wu Qin said that we should kill all of you. However, we should leave Leng Ruoxue, Dongfang Yu, Dongfang Lin, and a few other important people alive. Wu Qin wants to deal with them personally. Wu Yan also told us to be careful of the existence of a Totoro. If we see it, we should not attack for the time being, the leader of the men in black carefully added. After a long time, he finally told them everything he knew. After he finished speaking, he seemed to be relieved. He thought to himself, these people won't be torturing me now, right? Do you have anything to add? Uncle Long turned his attention to the other leader of the men in black. The other leader of the men in black was still a little hesitant, but seeing that his companion had already explained, he naturally couldn't hold on any longer. Speak quickly. Uncle Long shouted. Seeing the other party stutter and look at him in fear, he couldn't help but get angry. I said. I'll talk. The leader of the men in black hurriedly said, his heart trembling in fear. Then, he continued, Wu Xian told me to let the magical beasts be our cannon fodder. Well, let the magical beasts deal with Dongfang Yu and the others. We only need to capture Leng Ruoxue. This is our main mission. After saying these words, the leader of the men in black sneaked a glance at Long Ao and the others. Sure enough, he saw that the faces of Long Ao and the others had all darkened to varying degrees. The old phoenix ancestor, who had a bad temper, was so angry that he shouted out, "Fuck you, rhyme. You actually want to harm us. I'm not trying to harm you. Your king has agreed to this." The leader of the men in black whispered. What did you just say? Hearing this, Long Aahan immediately stood up and questioned him with a dark expression. Your king agreed. You're all cannon fodder they sent. Why else would they send you out? The leader of the men in black said with some sympathy. Motherfucker. What do you know? Can you explain everything to me? Hearing this, the old ancestor of the Phoenix clan shot up from her seat in anger. She grabbed the black-robed man's shoulder and roared. The man in black closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he opened his eyes and said, Long Ao is hated by the Dragon Emperor because the woman that the Dragon Emperor has taken a fancy to likes him. Long Chen is too close to Long Ao, and the Dragon Emperor is afraid that he will stand up for Long Ao. Thus, he sent them out together. What about me? And why was I sent out? The old ancestor of the Phoenix clan asked anxiously. You're too stupid. You always make the Phoenix King angry in public, but because of your strength, the Phoenix King can't punish you in public. So, he could only take this opportunity to send you out. As for the other reverend god of the Phoenix clan, he's just a nobody. He doesn't have much of a presence in the Phoenix clan, so the Phoenix King used him to make up the numbers. The black-robed man spoke the truth. As he spoke, he looked at the two hierarch-level experts of the Phoenix clan with even more sympathy. What about us? The white-robed man also stood up and asked. You're too much of a threat to the Tiger King, and you're too popular in the tribe. The Tiger King has long found you an eyesore. The other one is also a bystander. The man in black said carefully. After saying this, he lowered his head so that he would not become their punching bag. Damn it, how do you know so much about these things? Long Ao's eyes turned cold, and he asked a very important question. The Divine Master's estate has an intelligence department. We know the situation of every reverent god of the beast race. I happen to be one of the people in charge, so you can't hide your situation from me. The leader of the men in black was very honest. In any case, he had already said what he should and shouldn't have said. Therefore, he had nothing else to worry about. Since he had fallen into their hands, he had no hope of surviving. Now, his only hope was that they would let him die a quick death on account of his cooperation. Hearing this, Long Ao and the others fell silent. However, their expressions were obviously not good. After all, this kind of betrayal did not feel good. Thanks seeing them like this, Leng Ruoxue said very kindly, today's interrogation ends here. After saying that, she walked out of the cell. When they returned to their residence, Leng Ruoxue was hugged tightly by a pair of strong arms the moment she entered her room. How's the effect? The demon asked with a faint smile. He didn't want to go to the prison, so he stayed in the room and waited for Shuer. It's not just good. I've also learned a lot about Ramais. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. Even though she pitied Long Ao and the rest, the inside information that the leader of the men in black had revealed was very beneficial to her. As for the matter regarding Wu Chen, it was naturally Qing Ju who had read her mind. However, she didn't intend to let too many people know about what had happened in the fog. Where are the few Supreme Emperor-level beasts? Have they made their choice? The demon asked again. I didn't ask them, because they've suffered quite a big blow. Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. Originally, her main purpose of bringing Long Ao and the others to the hearing was to let them understand the grudges between them and Fog Ice. However, the two leaders of the men in black didn't give much information about this, and Yaoji was only complaining and scolding her non-stop. Therefore, Len Ruoxue believed that Long Ao and the others probably only had a rough idea of their identities. However, the things that the leaders told them about Long Ao and the others were completely out of Len Ruoxue's expectations. However, the consequences of her words made her very surprised. This way, it would be easier for her to subdue Long Ao and the others. In fact, her plan was to arrange for Long Ao and the others to go back to their respective clans as spies. However, she also knew that this was easy to think about but very difficult to do. Long Ao and the others might not be willing to do it. But now, it seemed to be much easier. However, she had always been kind to Beastie, so she was not willing to force Long Ao and the others. Therefore, she did not dare to make a conclusion on whether they could really be used by her. However, if they still wanted to be loyal to the current king of their respective clans under such circumstances, she did not want to force them. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. If one wanted to be blindly loyal, outsiders could not stop them. As she thought of this, Len Ruoxue's attitude towards this matter grew increasingly indifferent. When the demon heard Len Ruoxue's words, his curiosity was piqued. He could not help but ask, what kind of blow did they receive? When she heard his question, Len Ruoxue explained the entire situation to the demon. When the demon heard this, he could not help but laugh. This was a good thing for them. According to what you said, they should be back in their rooms licking their wounds now. The demon laughed. It should be. When I left the cell, they were still standing there like idiots. Len Ruoxue nodded. Ai. What a pitiful fellow. The demon sighed with a look of sympathy. I feel that this is very normal. The current kings of the dragon race, White Tiger race and Phoenix race were all people who betrayed their previous kings. Since they have such a past record, it's not hard to understand why they can't tolerate anyone else. Furthermore, I've also heard that the three races have been at odds with each other for a long time. Therefore, it's not hard to understand why their kings would take this opportunity to eliminate their enemies. Len Ruoxue analyzed. Yup. The more chaotic they are, the better it is for us. But now that Ramice already knows your identity, we can't continue to hide in the dark. This was also what the demon was most worried about. After all, the current Shuai was unable to fight against the fog ice. Even if he and Sung were by her side, they could only ensure Shuai's safety at most, but they couldn't easily attack the fog ice. To him and Sung, the price of attacking fog ice was very high. Unless they had no other choice, they could only hide in the dark to protect Shuai. As for Green Vessel, it had yet to recover to its peak state. More importantly, Green Vessel's strength was not reflected in its combat ability. Dream Dust was the same. To others, Huan Chen was very powerful, but he was also no match for fog ice. From the looks of it, only Shuai was able to deal with the fog ice and was most suitable to deal with it. However, Shuai's current strength was clearly not enough to compete with the fog ice. More importantly, Wu Jing already knew Shuai's identity, which was quite disadvantageous to Shuai, and at the same time increased the danger of Shuai. Chapter 2205, Choice 1. When the demon thought of this, his clear black eyes could not help but flash with worry. However, that strange emotion was quickly hidden by him. He knew that he could not easily reveal his low emotions, otherwise, it would cause great pressure to Shuai. Moreover, with him around, he would do his best to protect Shuai. At the thought of this, the demon took the initiative to change the topic to Dongfang Yu and the others. He asked, Shuai, when do you plan to take in Dongfang Yu and the others? I think they can't wait any longer. When do you think is the right time? Len Ruoxue asked, seeking the demon's opinion. Even though she still had some hidden grudges in her heart, she felt that those people had learned their lesson after this incident. Moreover, she had also neglected them for a long time. Hence, she did not intend to make things difficult for them anymore. After all, it was a huge test for her to receive so many resentful gazes every day. Long Ao and the other hierarch of the beast race have been dealt with. During this time, let them suffer a little more. The demon said after thinking for a while. Yes, we have to let them remember this profound lesson. Len Ruoxua nodded. Actually, for Master's sake, even if they weren't too polite to her, she wouldn't hold it against them. However, she couldn't stand their petty kindness. If they hadn't been soft-hearted and let Yaoji off, those people who had sacrificed themselves for the underground city wouldn't have died. Although Uncle Lien and the others had already suffered from the condemnation of their conscience, that could not save the lives of those who had fallen. Besides, since it has already happened, what's the point of regretting it? There was no medicine for regret in this world. Len Ruoxua did not appreciate the way Uncle Lien and the others did things. Not only was he self-righteous, but he was also soft-hearted. She really couldn't understand why a person like Uncle Lien, who was already an all-powerful expert in her master's era, would still be so childish in his actions. Not vicious enough. Sometimes, she often wondered if it was because they were not decisive enough that they were controlled by the fog and became its prisoners. Also, she couldn't understand her master's indulgence of fog. However, her master had already passed away. No matter what she thought, she would respect her master's choice at that time, even if she didn't agree with it. But in the future, how to deal with fog ice would be up to her. Now that things had come to this, Len Ruoxua was very clear that she and Wu Jing were natural enemies. The opposition between her and Wu Chen was inevitable. Even if she didn't take the initiative to find trouble with Wu Chen wouldn't let her off. There were too many things on her that Wu Xian coveted, and her strength was not high now. Therefore, Wu Xian would definitely not let go of this great opportunity. In the future, she would definitely have a lot of trouble. At the thought of this, Len Ruoxua felt slightly depressed. With her current strength, she would be at a disadvantage if she were to fight against Wu Yan. Therefore, she could only hope that the woman would be wary of the constraints of the laws of heaven and earth and not dare to attack her easily. This way, she would still have time to grow. However, she knew very well that she did not have much time. It was impossible for Wu Cheng to watch him grow without doing anything. If that was the case, she would be seeking her own death. She believed that she was not that stupid. And her. The most important thing right now was to strengthen himself. Only then could he better protect the people around him. Only then could he live freely in the divine realm. She didn't want to be chased around by the fog like a stray dog. However, the current her clearly couldn't afford to be high profile. After much thought, Len Ruoxua felt that it was better for her to avoid the fog. After he shared his thoughts with the demon agreed. Thanks then, they called Uncle Long and Dongfang Lin over to discuss the details. However, Len Ruoxua forbade Dongfang Lin from telling Dongfang Yu about it. After Dongfang Lin heard this, he could only helplessly nod his head in agreement. His heart was filled with 120,000 points of sympathy for his big brother. However, who could he blame for this? In the next few days, the atmosphere in the underground city was still gloomy. The beasts living in the guest house, especially the 6 venerate Lord-level divine beasts, were in low spirits. Seeing them like this, the other beasts were so scared that they didn't even dare to breathe. They were on tenterhooks every day, praying that such days would end soon. After giving them a few days to settle down, Len Ruoxua, the demon, Uncle Long, and Sung finally took the initiative to visit. When the beasts in the guest courtyard saw Len Ruoxua, it was as if they had seen their savior. Their eyes were filled with tears and they surrounded her in excitement. Upon seeing this, Len Ruoxua's forehead was filled with black lines. What was going on? What are you guys doing? Sung, who was in Len Ruoxua's arms, looked at the passionate beasts and asked in an unfriendly tone. Nothing. Don't do anything. We're too happy. It was true. We were too happy to see Miss Lang and were a little too excited. A beautiful white ape spoke up as the representative of the beasties. Get out of the way. Don't surround my girl. Azure angrily roared. His words were definitely powerful. In the next second, the beasts immediately scattered and looked at Azure with caution. Although they didn't know the rabbit's origin, they still had a lingering fear of it. Seeing that these beasts were very obedient, Azure nodded his head in satisfaction. Then, he raised his head proudly and asked, "What about those 6 guys? The 6 of you are in your rooms. No one is allowed to disturb us." The white ape replied, "Oh. Tell them to come out, my girl wants to see them." Azure loudly ordered. "Yes." The white ape nodded. Then, it took a few beastie with it and went to inform Long Ao and the others one by one. Not long after, Long Ao and the other 5 came out of their rooms. Len Ruoxue could not help but frown when she saw the 6 of them in low spirits and dejected looks. Were their mental fortitude that bad? If she couldn't even take this blow, then she would have to reconsider whether to accept these people. Even if they were reverent gods, if they didn't have a strong heart, she wouldn't be interested in them. With this thought in mind, Len Ruoxue's face turned stern when she saw them. "Miss Leng, please come to the living room." Long Ao quickly said. N. Len Ruoxue nodded. Then, she let Long Ao lead the way and followed them to the living room. Once they entered the living room, Len Ruoxue and the rest found a seat and sat down. Long Ao and the rest also sat down. However, Len Ruoxue did not take the initiative to speak. Long Ao and the rest did not know what to say either. Just like that, the few of them stared at each other. This situation made Len Ruoxue extremely depressed. Every time she interacted with them, it would start with them staring at each other. Each of these beasts was more depressed than the last, and now they seemed to have a kind of mood called sentimentality.